Chapter 741, Killing Intent on the Ferry. 1. As the setting sun passed down in the sky, dusk was left behind. It was already evening. Outside the city of God, one of the capitals of the continent, it was yet another lively night by Fragrance River. On the two river banks, 30 meters apart, hung many festive lanterns of yellow and green, while many people strolled leisurely about along the riverbanks. There were plenty of young couples talking about love beside the river. On the surface of the river, there were various floating restaurants of different sizes, slowly traveling through the water with various colored lanterns strewn over them. Sweet melodies and elegant sounds of zither originated from the floating restaurants, and echoed across the entire river. Sometimes, the loud conversations of a few aristocrats could be heard from the ferries. At the largest dock on Fragrance River, there was a huge ferry, around 300 meters in length. It was docked quietly there, like a huge beast from antiquity. On it were plenty of multicolored lanterns, dyeing the ferry an assortment of colors. It was extremely entrancing. Near the dock, there were over 100 sailors and servants in uniforms, who stood sternly in 2 rows, as if they were waiting for something. With such a huge ferry docked there and the great formation from the people, it was rather rare. As a result, it caused the passers-by to all glance at it, and point at the giant ferry and discuss it. Isn't that the largest and most luxurious floating restaurant, the Inky Stratus? Why has it stopped there? And why is there such a grand reception? This is quite rare. Tonight, the Inky Stratus has been reserved by someone. Otherwise, why would they be wasting time and not making money by stopping here for nothing? The Inky Stratus is the most luxurious, as well as the most expensive floating restaurant. I heard that eating a meal there costs something equivalent to several months' worth of expenditures for ordinary people. Just which wealthy person reserved the entire Inky Stratus? Just when everyone was pointing and discussing the ferry, a luxurious carriage bolted over from the distance. It stopped slowly close to the dock and shortly afterwards, 3 people got off it. Of the 3 people, 2 of them wore long, white robes with slender statures, and bore a shiny blue badge on their chests. As for the other person, he was a large, built man in tight, black clothing. The 3 of them were Jian Chen, Quan Yu Kai, and the 6th Cycle Heaven Saint Master that the Union had sent to protect Jian Chen, Yang Ling. With the appearance of the 2 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, Jian Chen and Quan Yu Kai, an intense hubbub immediately appeared in the crowd that had gathered nearby. They all looked away from the ferry, towards Jian Chen and Quan Yu Kai. Deep respect and admiration appeared in their eyes, along with some jealousy. Jian Chen and the other 2 ignored the sounds of discussions from the surroundings, and directly walked towards the huge ferry docked right ahead. A beautifully dressed middle-aged woman immediately walked over slowly to Jian Chen's group from in front of the ferry, and courteously bowed to them. He said, "Esteemed Radiant Saint Masters, the most famous floating restaurant, the Inky Stratus, has already completed its preparations. Please board the ferry." With that, the middle-aged beauty stepped to the side and made an inviting gesture towards Jian Chen's group. Jian Chen's gaze paused on the huge ferry. He said calmly, "Other than those who are needed, let the remaining people stay here, to welcome the 8 great clans of the City of God, as well as some other renowned clans." As soon as she heard the 8 great clans of the City of God, a shock immediately flashed across the middle-aged woman's eyes, and her expression became even more courteous. She said, "Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, this servant will definitely carry out your orders." Jian Chen's group of 3 strided into the ferry. As they passed by the 100 or so people, all of them bowed simultaneously towards Jian Chen and exclaimed, "We invite the Radiant Saint Master to board the ferry." Jian Chen paused slightly in his steps, and he furrowed his eyebrows. He who always preferred to keep a low profile clearly was not too used to such a treatment. However, he recovered soon after. He disappeared into the ferry. Jian Chen had already reserved the most famous and most luxurious ferry, the Inky Stratus, 2 days ago. It took up quite a lot of money, but compared to his wealth which could rival countries, it was insignificant. After Jian Chen's group disappeared into the ferry, there was another hubbub of discussion on the riverbank. However, not long after the hubbub began, the hurried sounds of gallops echoed in the distance once again. It was a luxurious carriage with over 20 large men on Class 5 magical beasts escorting it, quickly galloped over from the city. It stopped at the entrance to the dock very soon, and on the carriage, there was a banner waving in the air, and it bore the word, Cheng. Isn't that a carriage from the Cheng family, one of the 8 great clans of the City of God? And those guards on the Class 5 magical beasts, they must be the elites of the Chang family. Since the person in the carriage requires to be escorted by the elites of the family, his status must be extremely special. Immediately, several people began to gossip and discuss, and revealed a light of deep interest in their eyes. At this moment, the carriage door opened. A middle-aged man in long white robes, bearing a similar blue badge, climbed down from the carriage, before entering the ferry along with an old man. Not long after the middle-aged man entered the ferry, the hurried sounds of another carriage echoed in the distance once again. This time, it was a luxurious carriage escorted by several dozen large men in golden armors. In the end, it too stopped at the entrance to the docks, and an old man in embroidered robes climbed down from the carriage. Under the protection of 2 large, middle-aged men, he strode into the ferry. That's the carriage of the Zhou family, one of the 8 great clans of the City of God. Who would have thought that they've come too? Some people recognized the identity of the group of people and immediately cried out softly in surprise. Suddenly, a scorching wave of heat rolled in from the distance, as if the surrounding air was on fire, and caused the temperature of the river bank to rise. It's the Fire God clan, and the head of the 8 great clans. Even the people from the Fire God clan have come. There were several immediate exclamations of surprise from the crowd. There seemed to be a burning red cloud in the murky distance. Over 20 people on Class 5 magical beasts escorted a carriage. The people wore long, fire-red robes and gave off a scorching, fire-attributed presence. As they approached the lake, the thin vapor over Fragrance River slowly turned to thick mist. The Fire God clan is extremely powerful. Not only are they the head of the 8 great clans, I heard that their strength is already approaching the rulers of the City of God, the Tsar family. I heard that there is an extremely lengthy history to the Fire God clan. That they are an ancient clan that had survived from the ancient times, and they say that in the ancient times, the Fire God clan was one of the most powerful forces on the Tian Yuan continent. Just that with so many years, the clans slowly declined, and fell to such a level today. The Fire God clan always keeps a low profile in the City of God. Who would have thought that they'd come to Fragrance River in such a grand scale? I really wonder what will happen tonight. Quick, look, more have come. That's people from the Tsar clan. I never thought that another of the 8 great clans would come. Heavens, those people are from the Madison clan. Just what is going on tonight? Half of the 8 great clans have actually come, aren't they from the Qilong clan? The Qilong clan of the 8 great clans have also come. Quick, looks, isn't that the carriage from the Ho clan? I never thought that even people from the Ho clan would come, and that, isn't that people of the Deccan clan? My God, people from all 8 great clans have actually gathered, and from the guards that have come, the people clearly possess quite some status in their clans. Just what day is it today? As the 8 clans gathered, it immediately caused quite a large commotion at Fragrance River. Very soon, the news of the 8 great clans gathering at Fragrance River spread like wildfire. Even the smaller ferries floating about in the river could not help themselves but grow slightly closer, and even the zither sounds and sweet songs reverberating on the surface of the river became quieter. As the people of the 8 clans all entered the ferry, the Inky Stratus, which had been docked there for quite some time, it also began to leave slowly. It broke the surface of the water, and slowly floated towards the center of the river. On the deck of the Inky Stratus, there were large round tables placed about, all already filled with exotic delicacies. Jian Qin said a few words to the people of the 8 clans, before they all sat down. I have long heard that Brother Yang Yutian possesses extraordinary talent, and reached class 6 despite only being 24, with talent in practicing radiant arts approaching class 7. In the beginning, I didn't believe it, but after seeing you two, I realized Brother Yang Yutian really is a dragon among men. Brother Yang Yutian must have gained much from 3 months of seclusion in the Radiant Saint Tower. The speaker was an old man, and a member of the Qilong clan. His status was extremely great, as he was also a class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Jian Qin chuckled, the old senior must be praising me. I've indeed made a few slight gains from the Radiant Saint Tower. My trip to the Radiant Saint Tower has overturned my understanding towards Radiant Saint Masters. What slight gains, it's clearly a huge harvest. Quan Yukai muttered to himself rather unhappily beside Jian Chen, as he disagreed with what Jian Chen had said very much. Even though Quan Yotsai's voice was relatively soft, it was heard by everyone there. They all immediately gazed towards Quan Yukai, especially some of the class 6 Radiant Saint Masters there. They all looked at Quan Yukai with a great jealousy. I have long heard Master Quan Yukai has raised his abilities of radiant arts to an extremely high level, and challenged the expert who ranked 7th of the 10 great Radiant Saint Masters, and it ended in a draw. After 100 years of hard work, Master Quan Yotsai's strength surely has increased by quite a lot. The speaker was an average-looking middle-aged man. His tone was relatively cold. He wore long, white robes with a blue badge on his chest. He was also a class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Quan Yukai chuckled, of course. 100 years ago, my strength was equal to Li Maxin, but after 100 years, Li Maxin definitely is no longer my opponent. Speaking up to there, Quan Yukai suddenly stared at the middle-aged man with an ill intention and giggled, Sar Lanka, you also hold the position in the 10 great class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, and you're ranked 6th. When we have time, why don't we exchange some pointer? An undetectable coldness flashed across the middle-aged man's eyes, but his expression remained unchanged. He said indifferently, perfect. When I have the time, we can properly exchange some pointers. Chapter 742, Killing Intent on the Ferry, 2, Jian Chen's gaze towards Quan Yukai carried some astonishment. He did not think that Quan Yukai, someone as thick-skinned as a pig and rather unreliable, would actually possess the strength to challenge the 10 great class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. For the first time, there was some change to Jian Chen's opinion of Quan Yukai. He could not help but believe what Quan Yukai had said to Lin Bai about how he had a rather great attainment in radiant arts slightly, though it was only slightly. Noticing Jian Chen's change, Quan Yukai immediately revealed a smile that he believed to be enchanting and giggled at Jian Chen, how is it, Brother Yang Yutian? Do you finally believe it now? I, Quan Yukai, am not as deplorable as you've described. If you discuss matters with me, an esteemed class 6 Radiant Saint Master, not only will you not suffer losses, it'll even benefit you extremely greatly at my expenses. Shouldn't you give this a serious consider? Jian Chen shook his head with a slight smile. He did not say anything, though he thought to himself, this Quan Yukai really does harp on those 3 great radiant arts. 3 months ago, I heard that Brother Yang Yutian has unprecedented talent and is a modern prodigy. Not only have you reached class 6 at a young age of 24, your talent in practicing radiant arts is close to one of a class 7 Radiant Saint Master. Currently, it's getting closer and closer by the day to the fight for a chance at breaking through to class 7. The elimination competition will begin in a month's time. I wonder how confident Brother Yang Yutian is for obtaining a position in the top 10. A luxuriously robed old man said. He was the one in control for the Ho clan, Master Ho. He was also a class 6 Radiant Saint Master. The remaining members of the clans at the tables all cast their gazes towards Jian Chen. They clearly cared very much about the answer to the question. Hearing Master Ho's question, Quan Yukai immediately revealed a shocked expression. He stared fixedly at Jian Chen, clearly also astounded by Jian Chen's age and talent. However, he recovered soon after and thought to himself, no wonder this Yang Yutian can break through the seals to those 3 radiant arts. His talent for radiant arts actually approaches class 7. Though, I wonder about his current strength and to what level he can use radiant arts. Jian Qin smiled. Master Ho is too kind. It was only because I was rather lucky that I reached class 6 so quickly. However, in regards to the elimination battle in a month's time, I'm not confident that I will obtain a position in the top 10, but I will definitely give it my all. I, Qing Jian, believe brother Yang Yutian will definitely enter the top 10. After all, Yang Yutian's talent for radiant arts is almost similar to a class 7 radiant saint master, exceeding all of us. I trust that placing within the top 10 is nothing difficult for brother Yang Yutian. Here, let us celebrate in advance for brother Yang Yutian in obtaining a place in the top 10 in the name of the Qing family, said the refined, middle-aged man of the Qing family as he raised his glass of wine towards Jian Chen. After drinking the wine, Chang Jian continued, Brother Yang Yutian, I have a proposal. In the elimination battle a month away, why don't we work together? That way, both our chances at placing top 10 will greatly increase. I wonder how brother Yang Yutian feels about it. Brother Yang Yutian, Qing Jian's proposal is pretty good. If we work together, our chances at the top 10 will greatly increase. As soon as Qing Jian finished what he was saying, an old man spoke out. Master Ho began to laugh. Whenever it is the time of the elimination battle, the 8 great clans of the City of God will almost always work together. Brother Yang Yutian, why don't you work together with us? That way, the chance of survival inside will be much greater than when you are alone. Afterwards, the remaining people of different clans all spoke out to invite Jian Chen to join them. They knew that Jian Chen's future accomplishments would greatly exceed their own, just from looking at his talent. Jian Chen did not accept the invitations of the 8 clans. He hesitated for a while, and during that time, he could not help but remember the words spoken by the president. Right now, the Holy Empire is not so peaceful, so it's best to avoid getting too close with organizations related to the 3 great clans. Thinking up to there, Jian Chen made his decision. He said apologetically to the people, I understand everyone has good intentions, but in the battle a month away, I do happen to have my own plans, so I am unable to be with everyone. What Jian Chen had said immediately caused many people at the tables to change in expression. Even the lively atmosphere seemed to freeze at that instant, and in the next moment, the deck of the ferry became abnormally quiet, that even the sound from a dropped needle could be heard clearly. A while later, the heavy atmosphere was finally broken. Brother Yang Yutian, you must consider well. Going by yourself is extremely dangerous, making it extremely difficult to place within the top 10 in the end. It was an old man who spoke up, and he came from the Fire God clan. Jian Chen rejected him without any hesitation. I thank everyone's good intentions, but I have already made up my mind, so there is no need to say any more. At the dining tables, the expressions of a few people became stern, while an undetectable silver of coldness flashed across the eyes of others. At this moment, the dozing white tiger on Jian Chen's shoulder suddenly opened its eyes, staring fixedly at the surface of the river. Suddenly, the calm river surface was broken. 30 people in dark clothing leapt out, lunging towards the tables at lightning speed as they flickered with colored lights from different attributed saint force. No one was spared, with Jian Chen, Quan Yu Kai, and people of the 8 clans becoming their targets for attack. Protect Master Ho. Protect the young master. On the ferry, the guards of the 8 clans immediately sprinted onto the deck, retreating quickly and protecting their masters while rushing up to some of the dark-clothed people, engaging in intense battles. Fuck, around 30 Heaven Saint Masters. What a large scale. Quan Yu Kai cried out in alarm. A ball of white clouds formed below his feet, and he disappeared from the deck of the ferry in the blink of an eye. He fled faster than a rabbit. Of the 30-odd Heaven Saint Masters, around 20 of them went for the 8 clans, while the remaining dozen or so all went for Jian Chen. The 8 clans all possessed Heaven Saint Master guards who guarded their masters tightly, and retreated from the deck as they repelled the attacks from the dark-clothed men. All the people of the 8 clans displayed stern expressions. They had brought plenty of Earth Saint Master guards, but there were only a dozen or so Heaven Saint Masters, which was a great gap to the number of people trying to kill them. Not long after the battle began, the people of the 8 clans were slowly forced into the hold of the ship. There were also many guards of the 8 clans that had been injured from the attacks, covered in blood. Suddenly, a ball of dazzling light illuminated the pitch-black sky, and purged the sky of much of its darkness. A few highly regarded Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters of the clans all struck out, and each cast radiant arts from their hands towards the dark-clothed men. Currently, the people of the 8 clans had already been forced below the deck by the 20-odd assassins, while Jian Chen remained seated at the dining tables, perfectly calm and collected, while holding his head up high against the disaster. As for his surroundings, there were already a dozen or so men who had locked onto him, and currently approached him at lightning speeds. A powerful ripple of energy originated from behind him. 3 assassins approached Jian Chen first, and lunging at him. With their saint weapons glowing with a special attributed light, they were chock full of saint force. The corner of Jian Chen's lips curled into a mocking smile. He tilted his head and downed the glass of good wine. Without even looking backwards, he said softly, "Radiant Saint Shield." The surrounding Radiant Saint force began to gather around Jian Chen at an unbelievable pace, and formed a silvery shield with a diameter of a meter, blocking the strikes behind Jian Chen. Although the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters were battling against the assassins, they would always subconsciously glance past Jian Chen. When they witnessed how quickly Jian Chen had congealed the Radiant Saint Shield, they were all astounded. Jian Chen's speed at pulling up Radiant Saint Force was something they could not achieve even at full strength, and looking at Jian Chen's unfazed demeanor, he did not even seem to give it his all. This Yang Yutian really does possess talent for radiant arts that approaches Class 7. Just his speed of condensing a Radiant Saint Shield is already much greater than us. Several Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters thought to themselves. At this moment, the saint weapons of the 3 Heaven Saint Masters simultaneously collided with Jian Chen's Radiant Saint Shield, and carried along with the weapons a powerful ripple of energy. The Radiant Saint Shield, completely condensed of Radiant Saint Force, seemed like an extremely sturdy piece of steel. Each time it was struck it gave off a great loud clang, so deafening that it had become rather painful. Although the Radiant Saint Shield had blocked the simultaneous attacks of the 3 Heaven Saint Masters, it was covered in a layer of spiderweb cracks. Shortly afterwards, Jian Chen pointed gently towards the shield and it immediately shattered with a loud sound. It turned into countless small pieces of shrapnel, and shot towards the 3 Heaven Saint Masters at lightning speed like a white rain. The expressions of the 3 Heaven Saint Masters changed slightly. Vigorous saint force immediately surged from their bodies, and formed a barrier around their bodies to receive the shield shrapnel. The Radiant Saint Shield can actually be used like that. I've really widened my understanding today. Brother Yang Yutian really is impressive. You actually discovered an attack like that. Quan Yukai stared fixedly at Jian Chen from the hold of the shift, and sighed with praise. But Brother Yang Yutian needs to receive the attacks of a dozen or so Heaven Saint Masters at the same time. Can he endure it? Should I help him out? Quan Yukai thought for a little before speaking. Never mind. Although I, Quan Yukai, indeed has some strength, I'm helpless against so many Heaven Saint Masters. And since Brother Yang Yutian seems so confident, let's just observe the situation first, and have a look at Brother Yang Yutian's strength in the meantime. Radiant Saint Sword. Jian Chen did not pause in his actions. Just as the Radiant Saint Shield transformed into countless fragments and shot towards the 3 Heaven Saint Masters, a huge sword around 2 meters in length immediately condensed in front of him. With a swing of his hand, the giant sword became a white flash, and sped towards another black-clothed assassin. The assassin did not treat the Radiant Saint Sword too importantly. To him, although Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters possessed a certain level of offense, it was still not enough to threaten him, much less a young man in his 20s. However, when the Radiant Saint Sword collided with the assassin's saint weapon, it immediately produced a great bang. The man's expression changed greatly, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, as he was knocked backward with great force by the Radiant Saint Sword. Just a single Radiant Saint Sword from Jian Chen had caused a powerful Heaven Saint Master to vomit blood and retreat. This had caused all the other assassins who surrounded Jian Chen to be surprised, and just stare at Jian Chen in disbelief. Impossible, since when did Radiant Saint Sword become so powerful? An assassin could not control himself and exclaimed aloud. Chapter 743, Killing Intent on the Ferry. 3. Everyone be careful, this person's radiant arts are much more powerful than other Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. A 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master called out to alert his companions, before he used his full strength. As the great Radiant Saint force constantly surged into his saint weapon, it also began to glow greatly, before he swung it at Jian Chen. An extremely great sword qi shot out from the assassin's saint weapon. It shot forwards like a lightning bolt, and carried a sliver of pressure that originated from the world. At the same time, another 4 assassins around Jian Chen swung their saint weapons in a similar fashion. They all shot out a powerful sword qi at Jian Chen. Each sword qi carried slivers of pressure that originated from the world, which locked tightly onto Jian Chen. You even dare to make a fool of yourself with mere earth-tier battle skills. A sliver of disdain appeared on Jian Chen's face. He slowly unfolded his hands from his chest and called out, Radiant Saint Sword. Radiant Saint Shield. The surrounding Radiant Saint force quickly began to move violently. It gathered around Jian Chen's hands at an unbelievable speed, and formed into 4 Radiant Saint Swords that radiated with soft light around Jian Chen's left hand, while a giant, 3-meter-wide shield appeared near Jian Chen's right hand. The scene caused the Class 6 Radiant Saint Master to stare wide-eyed once again. How is this possible? Yang Yutian actually condensed 4 Radiant Saint Swords and a Radiant Saint Shield together in such a short time. Master Ho was no longer able to remain calm. He stared dumbfoundedly at Jian Chen, as if he had just witnessed something impossible. Heavens! Brother Yang Yutian's strength is just too impressive. Not only can he simultaneously condense 4 Radiant Saint Swords and a Radiant Saint Shield, the speed it took him is several times greater than me. My God, just how does he do it? Quan Yotsai's mouth was agape, while the shock in his heart had already reached an unreturnable state. Brother Yang Yutian indeed is very powerful. With just a single hand, he's done something that completely surpassed all of us. Even the person who places first in the top 10 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters probably can't cast 5 Radiant Arts at the same time to such a level. The refined, middle-aged man of the Qing family sighed emotionally in his heart. His gaze towards Jian Chen was filled with shock and disbelief. Sar Lanka stared sternly at Jian Chen. His eyes flickered with a gleam of light and he said softly, This Yang Yutian is much stronger than I've anticipated. What a pity that he's unwilling to join us. Once the battle starts, we'll become enemies sooner or later. The old man from the Fire God clan said softly, also with a gleam of light flickering in his eyes. Hearing that, a cold light flashed across Sar Lanka's eyes and he said no more. Swish! 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 With 4 ear-piercing whooshes, the 4 Radiant Saint Swords formed streaks of white light that rushed towards the 4 Heaven Saint Masters and their Earth-tier battle skill sword qi. Bang! The 4 Radiant Saint Swords collided with the 4 sword qis, and immediately produced a great sound of collision. As they slammed into each other, the Radiant Saint Swords and the sword qi actually collapsed at the same time mid-air. It formed a violent energy which rippled in all directions. It caused the largest ferry of Fragrance River, the Inky Stratus, to rock from side to side, while the waves created reached several meters high. The dark sky was completely illuminated from the white light given off by the Radiant Saint Swords as they collapsed. Jian Chen immediately used his right hand to block his chest. The Radiant Saint Shield seemed to be pulled along by an invisible force, and it followed Jian Chen's right hand and moved from Jian Chen's side to right in front of him. As it floated there, it helped Jian Chen block the havoc-wreaking energy ripples. At the same time, a few remaining assassins flew in from behind Jian Chen and swiped at him with their saint weapons at the same time. A cold light flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. The radiant saint shield remained in front him, but he called out with a deep voice, "Radiance burst." As soon as he finished speaking, the radiant saint force in a radius of 5 kilometers immediately became violent. The originally gentle, sheep-like radiant saint force actually suddenly became explosive, like a vicious tiger, and it all gathering around Jian Chen in less than half a second. They became raindrop-sized balls of white light, and each carried a forceful energy, as if it was sharp sword qi that was capable of piercing rock. At the same time, the radiant saint swords in the hands of the clan members quickly began to dim, and disappeared soon after. Afterwards, a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master cried out in astoundment, "How is this possible? All the Radiant Saint force in a radius of 5 kilometers has all disappeared." The Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters all revealed extremely astonished expressions, and they gazed at each other. The shock in their hearts had already reached a limit, they were not even able to speak anymore. All the Radiant Saint force in a radius of 5 kilometers had been sucked clean, so that even they were unable to continue casting radiant arts. They had lived for so long, yet this was something they had never encountered. "Brother Yang Yutian, you're just too impressive. You've actually sucked up all the Radiant Saint force in the surrounding area, so that even other Radiant Saint Masters are no longer able to cast radiant arts. My admiration for you surges like the endless waves of the river. Brother Yang Yutian, from today onwards, you are my idol." Quan Yukai stared at Jian Chen in interest, and his face was covered with an expression of admiration. Jian Chen's expression was cold, as if he did not realize how great of an impact he was to the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters of the 8 clans. Cold light flickered in his eyes and a sharp but undetectable killing intent appeared. He called out with a deep voice, "Radiance burst, go." With Jian Chen's gesture, the countless points of light formed from Radiant Saint force surged at the assassins behind him, like a moth lunging at a fire. The powerful strength Jian Chen had displayed before was witnessed by all the black-clothed assassins, so even against such an underwhelming attack, they did not dare to be complacent at all. Vast amounts of Radiant Saint force immediately surged violently from their bodies, forming a thick barrier around them to block the attack from the points of light. At the same time, they swung their saint weapons constantly, and smashed the points of light. The specks of light formed from Radiant Saint force seemed insignificant, but each speck carried a powerful and sharp force. As soon as they collided with the saint weapons in the hands of the assassins, they gave out consecutive, metallic screeches. "Arg!" An assassin gave out a mournful cry. The specks of light had broken through his protection formed from saint force, piercing deeply into his body. The great pain caused him to cry out, "Help me," on impulse. Although the specks of light was blocked for the other assassins, the situation for them was not great either. The specks were just too densely packed, as numerous as rain. Many of the specks broke through the swings of their saint weapons, and collided with the barrier formed from Radiant Saint force, causing it to tremble greatly. "This fucking thing is just too powerful. My protection from saint force can't hold much longer. It's going to fail soon. Retreat." An assassin with a shaking barrier cursed aloud. He gave up on this opportunity to attack Jian Chen, and quickly retreating backwards. "Is this goddamn Radiant Saint Master Class 6 or Class 7? Why is he so overpowered? We actually can't get any closer to him." Several assassins all swore aloud. They were all forced back by Jian Chen's radiance burst, and were forced to give up on their attack and protect themselves. "Do you just want to retreat like this? How can it be so easy?" A sneer formed on Jian Chen's face, and with a deep voice, "Radiant Saint Sword." As soon as he finished speaking, 3 white streaks of light suddenly began to flash, as they quickly flew towards the ferry and struck at one of the retreating assassins. He actually condensed a Radiant Saint sword from over 5 kilometers away, and then got them to fly in. When the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters witnessed what was happening, they were immediately dumbfounded. This Yang Yutian really is so skilled to be able to do such a maneuver. He condensed a Radiant Saint sword over 5 kilometers away, and then controlled the swords to fly in from so far away. Unbelievable. The Class 6 Radiant Saint Master from the Cheng family mumbled at a slight loss. As for Sar Lanka, his expression became extremely ugly, while the complexions of the members from other clans fluctuated. Be careful from behind. An assassin discovered the 3 Radiant Saint swords flying in from the distance and immediately cried out to warn his companions. Meanwhile, his eyes were wide open as he stared at the 3 faraway Radiant Saint swords with disbelief. The 3 swords actually flew in from over 5 kilometers away. Hearing the cry of warning, the other black-clothed assassins all noticed the Radiant Saint swords flying in from behind. Each was greatly surprised. The 3 Radiant Saint swords directly shot towards one person each. The swords possessed strength equivalent to the full-powered blow from a Heaven Saint Master. As the first sword collided with the person's saint weapon, it knocked him backwards quickly, while he produced a muffled cough from his throat. He was already heavily injured. Before the person could even return to his senses, a second sword shot towards him. Although it was successfully blocked by the person, he spat out a mouthful of blood onto his hand which held the saint weapon that had already become numb from the clash. His right hand with the radiant weapon drooped powerlessly. Closely afterwards, the third Radiant Saint Force sword attacked the heavily injured man, basically right after the second sword. It pierced the man's chest, and when it had entered halfway, it suddenly exploded, and blasting the assassin's body to shreds. Even his soul was unable to escape, instantly killing him. A Heaven Saint Master had fallen by the hands of a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master just like this, not to mention the fact that it was under a situation of many against one, attacking from all directions. After killing a Heaven Saint Master, Jian Chen did not show any happy emotions. His expression remained just as cold, while powerful killing intent exuded from his eyes. He then pointed his right hand at the sky with his head held up, and gazed at the pitch-black sky, Judgment's Sword. Chapter 744, The Strength of God's Descent. What? Judgment's Sword. Is it one of the 3 great Class 7 Radiant Arts, Judgment's Sword? The people from the 8 clans were immediately astounded, and stared at Jian Chen in absolute disbelief. Impossible. Yang Yutian is only a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. How can he obtain the secret manual to practicing Judgment's Sword? I heard that it's impossible to obtain it without being Class 7, and also impossible to practice. Yang Yutian must be faking it. It's a bluff. How is it possible for him to cast one of the 3 great radiant arts, Judgment's Sword? The Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters of the 8 clans all spoke out. Most of them did not believe that Jian Chen could really use Judgment's Sword. Impossible. It's only been so long and brother Yang Yutian can already use the 3 great radiant arts. Is he not Class 7 but instead Class 7? Quan Yu Kai, who was hiding in the hold of the ship, stuck out his head, staring fixedly at Jian Chen. At this moment, a white light appeared in the distant horizon, illuminating the pitch-black sky. It created a unique scene, which attracted the attention of countless people on the distant riverbanks. The white rays of light were all Radiant Saint Force, that gathered towards Jian Chen from 5 kilometers away. Jian Chen pointed at the sky with one finger. The vast quantities of Radiant Saint Force quickly condensed at the tip of his finger, and soon condensed into a silvery white holy sword, 10 meters in length. The sword radiated with dazzling light, and dyed the entire area snow-white. Moreover, there was a surging pressure that originated from the sword, which caused the surrounding space to become sticky. When the other Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters faced the pressure, they even struggled to breathe. Jian Chen stood perfectly straight on the deck of the ferry, under the silvery white sword. He seemed just like a god, standing between the earth and the heavens. His cold expression and sharp gaze were filled with a certain sternness, as if he was holy and could not be offended. This this is really the Judgment Sword. A radiant saint master of the 8 clans cried out with a trembling voice. No, that's not the true Judgment Sword. The true Judgment Sword would cause a phenomenon several times greater than it is now. Although Yang Yutian has cast Judgment Sword, it's only a small portion of the true Judgment Sword. Master Ho said with a low voice. Even though the Judgment Sword cast by Jian Chen was far from the true arte in terms of strength, it was still an incomparable deed in their eyes. The expressions of the assassins who had surrounded Jian Chen became extremely ugly, and they cried out, "This is bad, this is one of the 3 great radiant arts, Judgment Sword. It can even kill saint rulers. Retreat, you definitely cannot be locked on by it. No one can escape it alive." Hearing that, the assassins in the surroundings immediately dispersed, flying into the distance as they fled. Suddenly, Jian Chen swung his hand. The sword condensed on the tip of his finger transformed into a streak of silvery white light, and shot towards the slower assassins at the back like a lightning bolt. The sword was extremely fast, not allowing the assassins to escape at all. It passed through them, but the places it had cut through were not fatal. However, the sword was the Judgment Sword, one of the 3 great radiant arts, so it carried an extremely great energy, killing them instantly. Jian Chen's 2 eyes seemed to explode with a flickering of light, like 2 lanterns in the dark night. In the next moment, his presence actually formed an extremely wondrous connection with the Judgment Sword. After the sword slaughtered the assassins, it had actually continued to pursue the other darkly clothed men, under Jian Chen's control. With the speed of the Judgment Sword, it had killed another 3 assassins in less than a second. Afterwards, it continued to pursue the other with no change in speed. No, this isn't the real Judgment Sword. The real Judgment Sword's strength is definitely not just this. Whatever. Since we can't run, we might as well work together and cast a heaven-tier battle skill together to break that incomplete Judgment Sword. An assassin clearly understood the radiant arte, so he called out immediately to try and save them. The remaining few assassins all gathered together, casting heaven-tier battle skills simultaneously. Immediately, a powerful pressure began to permeate the surroundings, locking tightly onto the sword that shot over. A few heaven-tier battle skills shot from the hands of the assassins, and collided violently with the sword, mid-air. Boom! Followed by a deafening rumble, the sword and the several heaven-tier battle skills collapsed together in the middle of the sky. The powerful energy ripples wreaked havoc on the surroundings, lifting up the water below to a height of a dozen or so meters. Even the ferry was greatly affected, with huge cracks appearing on the deck. It soon covered the entire ferry, while the bow of the ferry was essentially destroyed. The several dark-clothed assassins were knocked backwards by the powerful energy ripple. Even with the Radiant Saint shield covering Jian Chen in front, it caused Jian Chen to take several steps back after receiving the energy ripples with the shield. On the other side, the 8 clans had already stopped their battles with the 20-odd assassins. All of them gazed at Jian Chen. As a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, the arte cast by Jian Chen all by himself had shocked them all. Of the dozen or so Heaven Saint Masters that surrounded him, close to 10 were already dead, while there were only the last few remaining. The 20-odd assassins around the members of the 8 clans and the other Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters looked at each other. Afterwards, the assassins seemed to be connected on a mental level, all abandoning the people of the 8 clans and rushed at Jian Chen. At that time, all of their gazes became icily cold, including the people of the 8 clan. Powerful killing intent began to permeate from them, clearly making up their minds to actually kill Jian Chen. A dozen or so of the assassins all attacked Jian Chen with their strongest attack in a circle, while the others shot into the sky. They floated high in the sky, charging up their heaven-tier battle skills. Seeing that, Quan Yotsai's expression changed greatly. He mumbled in a voice which only he could hear, "Mother of God, the people of the 8 clans are going too far. Are they trying to silence him by killing him? Yang Yutian's the disciple of the president. If they do that, wouldn't they offend the president? Sigh, It's such a pity that I only have this much strength. It's certain death for against so many heaven saint masters. I don't even have the chance of escaping. Brother Yang Yutian, it's not that I don't want to help you, it's that I really can't. I hope you are able to survive without harm. If anything really happens to you, I will definitely report it to the president and get him to take revenge for you. Feeling the killing intent from the darkly clothed assassins, Jian Chen's gaze became completely frozen over. A powerful killing intent began to permeate from his heart. Master Yang Yutian, you leave quickly. I'll block them. A heavy voice appeared. It was Yang Ling, standing in front of Jian Chen and blocking him with his large body. His expression was determined. At this moment, Yang Ling had already accepted death. Even if he had to die here, he needed to let Jian Chen escape safely. Looking at Yang Ling's muscular body, Jian Chen was deeply moved. His gaze became complicated. He could clearly feel that Yang Ling had already accepted his death, to die for someone who he had only known for less than 3 days and did not have any particular feelings for. At that very moment, Jian Chen's impression of Yang Ling skyrocketed. Awe! Yang Ling, who stood in front of Jian Chen, had no clue about how his status in Jian Chen's heart had already underwent a great change. He gave out a long roar to the sky, and rushed towards the dozen or so assassins with a giant sword in his hand and without any fear. He carried a spirit with no fear in death. Even though Yang Ling was a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master, the dozen assassins had an advantage in numbers after all. Also, they were not weak, with several being 5th cycle Heaven Saint Masters. As a result, as soon as he began fighting with them, he was suppressed by people at a similar level to him. Afterwards, he was struck in the chest with palm strikes from 2 assassins, causing him to spray blood from his mouth, already heavily injured. In the end, 3 saint weapons were thrust ruthlessly at his body, punching holes in his chest, heart and his dantian. Master Yang Yutian, leave. Yang Ling gave a heart-wrenching roar as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He used his own body to stop a few assassins from moving, to give time for Jian Chen to run. Although Yang Ling knew Jian Chen was very strong, he was facing up against over 20 Heaven Saint Masters, with several of them charging Heaven-tier battle skills at the same time. Once they struck forth with the battle skills, even 6th cycle Heaven Saint Masters would die, without a doubt, not to mention the fact that Jian Chen had already gone through several battles before, consuming all the Radiant Saint force in a radius of 5 kilometers. He had already expended a lot of his energy. Even if he currently still had some ability to fight, he was not able to resist against 20 Heaven Saint Masters working together in Yang Ling's eyes. This was why Yang Ling had accepted death to make time for Jian Chen to escape, because he was responsible for Jian Chen's safety. Jian Chen stared dumbfoundedly as the 3 saint weapons pierced Yang Ling's body. His killing intent had already reached the absolute limit as he said icily, "None of you will be leaving today." Jian Chen quickly formed a weird seal with his 2 hands, slowly closing his eyes. At that moment, he seemed to fuse with the world. Suddenly, there was an extremely bright light that appeared in the pitch-black sky. It was as dazzling as the sun above the 9 heavens. It illuminated the entire area, not only painting the surrounding river in a near bright like daytime glow, it even illuminated a small portion of the city of God, 10 kilometers away. It alarmed countless people in the city. What's this? The sudden change caused the 20-odd assassins to stop. They all looked into the sky, astounded. What is that thing? On the ferry, the Class 6 Radiant Saint Master raised their heads one after another to look at the sky, all bearing shocked expressions. Within the city of God, a dozen or so people appeared from nowhere above 8 huge manors. They gazed at the powerful white light in the sky several dozen kilometers away. The depths of their eyes were filled with great worry. That's the Forbidden Arte, God's descent. There's a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master casting the Forbidden Arte. No, this is different from how it's described in the records. Although it's caused a great commotion, its strength seems a little weaker. Yep. This god's descent seems strong, but it's actually nothing. It can only pose some non-lethal threats to first or second heaven layer saint rulers. In the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Master Union, the president who sat cross-legged on the top floor, cultivating suddenly snapped open his eyes. He arrived beside the window in a flash and gazed into the distance in shock. He mumbled, "That's the god's descent." "No, that's the incomplete version. It only possesses the form but not the power. I actually can't feel any origin energy in it." Just which prodigy discovered a method like this? Although the arte's strength will greatly diminish when cast like this, it doesn't require the offering of longevity. No. I must go and see. On a white cloud, the president shot out from the window into the distance like a lightning bolt. Chapter 745, Arrival of the President on the Inky Stratus. The near 20 darkly clothed assassins were astounded by the phenomenon that had occurred. At that moment, a strong feeling of uneasiness had suddenly appeared in all their minds. Everyone quickly kill him. We must not let him cast that arte. An assassin cried out, before rushing at Jian Chen first, no longer paying any attention to Jian Chen's strength. Afterwards, the remaining assassins all returned to their senses and rushed at Jian Chen, wanting to disperse Jian Chen's radiant arte while he was still charging up. Although many of them had no idea what radiant arte it was, they understood just how powerful it was just from the great commotion caused by it. In the sky, the assassins who could use heaven-tier battle skills also completed their preparations. A great pressure weighed down on the area, locking tightly onto Jian Chen. God's descent. A ripple, visible with the naked eye, quickly spread out from Jian Chen in all directions. Wherever the ripple passed by, it would cause the space to instantly freeze. The assassins who rushed at Jian Chen were all frozen in various poses, unable to move at all. In that moment, time seemed to stop. All the people of the 8 clans were also trapped by the invisible force. The ferry stopped floating along the river water stopped flowing, and even the breeze completely disappeared. The several people in the sky who had completely charged up their heaven-tier battle skills and were ready to cast them were forcefully locked in place. The vast energy corralled the shapeless power of the battle skills, without a single sliver leaking out at all. The entire world went silent in that moment. The only change was with the white light in the sky, where it became brighter and brighter, more and more dazzling before in the end, it descended from the sky as a huge light pillar, 100 meters in length, encasing everyone present within it. Jian Chen maintained a weird hand seal, standing close-eyed on the deck of the ferry. In the moment he was enveloped by the pillar of light, he felt a wondrous connection form between his mind and the pillar. In the area encased by the pillar, it seemed to become a different domain. In the domain, Jian Chen was God, the all-powerful God, the God that controls life. Unless someone possessed strength that exceeded the domain and exceeded the absolute limits of the domain, no one could escape its judgment. The several heaven-tier battle skills in the air quickly dispersed, turning into strands of energy of the world and disappeared into the surroundings. Shortly afterwards, the dark-clothed assassins who had cast the heaven-tier battle skills began to slowly turn into dust at an observable rate, disappearing into the sky. Shortly afterwards, the 20-odd men on the deck slowly began to disintegrate too, turning into dust. There was no blood, nor any clothes left behind. Even the spatial rings they wore on their fingers turned into dust, disappearing into the world. It was extremely strange. In the blink of an eye, over 30 Heaven Saint Master assassins died, with no one spared. Even though it was an incomplete god's descent, its strength was nothing Heaven Saint Masters could resist. When all the assassins had passed away, the giant pillar of light that had descended from the sky quickly disappeared. All those who were trapped inside also regained their mobility, and the frozen time began to flow again. The ferry broke through the water, and the river water also began to flow slowly, producing light splashing sounds. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with fatigue. His straight body on the deck seemed to suddenly be blown around in powerful winds, tottering about. Although the God's Descent and Judgment Sword were both known as one of the three great radiant arts, the God's Descent was a forbidden technique after all. Their strength could not be compared. Just from the single casting of God's Descent, it had almost sucked Jian Chen's soul dry. At this moment, Jian Chen's eyelids were extremely heavy. Even keeping his eyes open was an extremely difficult task, and his brain currently throbbed with a great headache. His current status was like a normal person who had not slept for 3 days. Not only was he extremely exhausted, he had overexerted his mind, creating extremely great pain that was difficult to bear with. The people of the 8 clans all stood there absolutely dumbfounded, but they returned to their senses without much time. Although they were immobilized before, they could still think, witnessing the unbelievable scene clearly. Over 20 Heaven Saint Masters were turned to dust, bit by bit, just like that from the white pillar of light, without any resistance. They could not even struggle. It caused great shock to them. After all, the person who had done that was not a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master, but a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, the same of them, not to mention it was a 24-year-old. Many streaks of white light cut across the dark sky, quickly flying over from the distance, before stopping right about Fragrance River. The first person was a ruddy, white-robed old man. Beneath him was a cloud completely formed from radiant saint force. He seemed like an immortal. The person was the president of the Radiant Saint Master Union, and behind him, there were many Class 7 Radiant Saint Master elders. Within them included the 9th Elder, 14th Elder and 5th Elder, who Jian Chen had met before. The president quickly glanced across the inky stratus, stopping as soon as he reached the exhausted Jian Chen. A sliver of shock flashed across his face and he cried out, "Yang Yutian, did you cast that God's Descent from before?" Jian Chen stared at the president in the sky rather lifelessly and said, "Yang Yutian greets Master. Master has guessed correctly. The God's Descent from before was indeed cast by disciple, though it is incomplete." The shock on the president's face became stronger and stronger. Even the elder who stood behind the president stared at Jian Chen with a gaze of disbelief. "Yang Yutian, perhaps you've broken through the seals of the 3 great radiant arts?" The president asked once again. Jian Chen nodded his head slightly. He no longer had the strength to speak anymore. Right now, he was quite tempted to just topple over on the spot and sleep soundly. Not only did the overexertion of his mind create great exhaustion and a great headache, it made Jian Chen feel like his soul was about to disappear. "Ha ha ha ha, good, good, good. You are indeed my disciple. Yang Yutian, your actions have made me very impressed." The president began to laugh aloud. He was extremely joyful. With a gesture of his hand, a dense ball of radiant saint force formed a cloud, pulling Jian Chen from the ferry. He said with concern for the first time, "Yang Yutian, you've currently overexerted yourself. You need to quickly heal. I'll take you back." Shortly afterwards, the president looked towards the people of the 8 clans and his gaze immediately turned into a glare. With a deep voice, he said, "You 8 clans better know your place. Otherwise, even with the Tsar family covering you, my Radiant Saint Master Union will definitely not let you off." Hearing that, the expressions of the people all changed. It became dead silent immediately. Carrying Jian Chen, the president flew from the area, directly proceeding to the headquarters of the Union. The 5th Elder looked at the bloody ferry and sighed softly. He thought to himself, the people of the 8 clans have gone a little too far. Yang Yutian is someone highly regarded by the president after all. Fortunately he's fine, otherwise, perhaps the president's temper will be lit once again. The 5th Elder waved his hand, and a ball of gentle radiant saint force immediately dragged the heavily injured Yang Ling into the sky. Afterwards, he followed behind the president, back to the headquarters of the Union. With their departure, all the people left were the people of the 8 clans and the coward Quan Yu Kai. All of them stood there, still badly shaken. The strength of God's Descent had completely stunned them. "Sai, what you've done this time is a little overboard. Though, fortunately the situation hasn't reached an irreparable level. An old voice resounded in the sky about the ferry, entering the ears of every person from the 8 clans. 10 meters above the ferry, a dozen or so people of different ages had already appeared at a certain time. They seemed to be a part of the world, without using any energy to float in the sky. They seemed more like ordinary people than anything else. Chapter 746, Outstanding Prodigy in the City of God. Jian Chen was brought to a quiet room at the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Master Union by the president. The president said with a gentle tone, "Yang Yutian, you should rest here. When you fully recover, come and find your master. Master has some things he wants to speak with you about." "Yes, master." Jian Chen replied courteously, before he entered the room. He sat cross-legged on the cushion in the room and slowly closed his eyes. The president glanced at Jian Chen with a smile. At that moment, his impression of his disciple already began to soar, because Jian Chen's performance tonight had even made the president hold him in high esteem. In the Ho clan of the 8 clans, Master Ho locked himself in a room, unwilling to see anyone after he was brought back by the ancestor of the clan. In the luxurious moment, Master Ho currently sat on his bed in deep thought. The light in his eyes constantly flickered, while his complexion constantly varied. Tonight on the ferry, the great strength displayed by Jian Chen had shocked Master Ho greatly, especially the scene where the strength of God's descent had slowly turned the 20-odd assassins to dust. It was like a brand, searing deeply into his mind, unable to be removed. He would never forget what he witnessed that night, never forget the strength of God's descent, much less forget the person who caused all of it, a 24-year-old. Yang Yutian. Yang. Yu. Tian. Master Ho mumbled to himself with a soft voice, and his gaze immediately turned into a glare. He said softly again, "Yang Yutian, I never thought you would actually be so strong. Not only do you have a grasp on the Judgment Sword, one of the 3 forbidden arts, you even know the most powerful forbidden arte, God's Descent, and you can successfully cast it. Perhaps even in all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, you can reign supreme with such great strength. Too bad. Since you're unwilling to join hands with us 8 clans, we'll become enemies sooner or later in the competition in a month's time. We won't be able to avoid clashing with each other. And with what happened tonight, you'll probably realize soon that it was all organized by the 8 clans. We wanted to test you. Too bad none of us thought you'd be so strong, which caused our plan to completely spiral out of control. Whatever. Since there's already enmity between us, I can only go all in. Yang Yutian, just blame that you appeared at the wrong time." A sliver of killing intent flashed across Master Ho's eyes. Shortly afterwards, he gazed towards the door and called out in a deep voice, "Golden Guard." The door opened, and a person completely clad in golden armor walked in. He clasped his hands. "What does Master Ho require?" "Golden Guard, go contact the other 7 great clans. There's something important I want to discuss with them," Master Ho said. "Yes, Master Ho." The gold-armored guard left. In the Sar clan, the average-looking middle-aged man, Sar Lanka, currently sat on a lower seat in a grand hall with a dark expression. A sliver of powerful killing intent would flash across his eyes from time to time. At this moment, a purple-robed, dashing middle-aged man strode into the hall. He directly walked up the stair to a raised pomp, and sat down on the central seat. "Lanka, just what has happened? Why have you alarmed the ancestor who never comes out of seclusion?" The purple-robed man stared rather sternly at Sar Lanka down below. "It's all because of Yang Yutian, father. Yang Yutian is really strong. He actually knows God's Descent, a radiant arte where only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters can cast. He wiped out all the people our 8 clans sent to test him," Sar Lanka said with a soft voice. The purple-robed man's expression changed slightly and he exclaimed with a deep voice, "What? He knows God's Descent? Perhaps he's already a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master?" He's not class 7, and the god's descent he cast was not the true god's descent. He probably obtained the arte, and then found a method in which class 6 radiant saint masters could cast it. Sar Lanka said. I recall that he only entered the Radiant Saint Tower for a mere 3 months. It's unbelievable that he could reach such a level in 3 months. The purple-robed man gave out a sigh. Sar Lanka stared fixedly at the middle-aged man and said, Father, Yang Yutian must be eliminated. Not only is his existence an obstruction to us placing top 10, it's also extremely bad for the Tsar family's plans. The purple-robed man could not make up his mind, so he did not reply immediately. You've put it well. This Yang Yutian must be eliminated. Suddenly, a heavy voice reverberated in the hall. In the center of the hall, a tightly dressed, middle-aged man had already appeared at a certain time. The middle-aged man's body was extremely muscled. He was stocky, and over 2 meters in height. His uncovered arms were clad with large muscles. His hair was several inches long, while his square face carried an unconcealed valiance. On his forehead, there was a heart-wrenching scar, which made him seem even more fierce. I greet the ancestor. The purple-robed man and Sar Lanka bowed towards the large man at the same time. They were both extremely courteous. That person was the strongest and oldest ancestor of the Sar clan, a powerful saint ruler. The ancestor stood there with his arms crossed. I already know about the matter with Yang Yutian. He is indeed an outstanding genius, and if he continues to grow, he will definitely become the president of the Union. It's just a pity that his existence interferes with the Tsar family's plans. The current president of the Union only has around 100 years before he'll pass away from old age. Without him, the Union will greatly weaken in the future, and with that, it'll become much easier for the Tsar family to control the Union. But in 100 years, Yang Yutian will be able to reach a great level similar to the president with his talent. So, we have to eliminate him. Ancestor, is the idea of eliminating Yang Yutian from the Tsar family? The purple-robed man asked cautiously. The ancestor nodded slightly. Yes, ancestor, I'll immediately go organize this. This time, the purple-robed man did not hesitate at all. Remember, you must never send our own people to kill Yang Yutian, and you must not leave any evidence. The Tsar family wants to control the entire empire and is about to declare war on the other 2 great clans. In such an important time, you definitely must not offend the neutral Union. The ancestor said with a deep voice. Afterwards, he suddenly disappeared from the hall. Just at this moment, a guard hurried in from outside. He knelt on one knee and said, reporting to the Patriarch, Master Ho from the Ho clan has sent an invitation for the Patriarch and the young master to go to the Ho clan. There's something important to be discussed. I understand. You can leave. The purple-robed man waved his hand and dismissed the guard. Once the guard left, a sliver of light flashed across Sar Lanka's eyes. He said, Master Ho has actually sent an invitation to discuss important matters right now. Father, I think this is most likely related to Yang Yutian. The purple-robed man nodded slightly. Since Master Ho has sent an invitation, let's go there through the secret tunnel. In the middle of the night, the huge city had already become extremely quiet. The wide streets were desolate, without anyone there at all. At this moment, in an area 100 meters below the Ho clan, there was a large basement, with a dozen or so striking people sitting around a long table. Everyone, I've invited everyone here for a reason. I believe most of you have already guessed it. Yes, the reason why I've invited everyone here today is to handle Yang Yutian. A powerful killing intent flashed across Master Ho's eyes. I'll be honest. Before I came here, I received a message from my ancestor, to get us to eliminate Yang Yutian. This Yang Yutian's existence has already greatly impacted the Tsar family's plan. An old man in fiery red robes said. He was the one in control for the Fire God clan. Master Ho smiled slightly. I believe there's quite a few of you who've also received a similar message. Since it's like that, let us cut to the chase and discuss how we can handle Yang Yutian without using our own forces. I suggest we go find the assassination organizations to handle this. Those assassination organizations are good with assassination, and are essentially impossible to guard against. If we let them handle it, not only will there be a greater chance in the task being completed, we won't be exposed either. A middle-aged man suggested. This is a decent idea. Of the three great assassination organizations, the baleful force of the Bloodsword sect is strange and mysterious. They can influence the target's mind in an undefendable way. Before the baleful force, even saint rulers will be affected. If we request the Bloodsword sect to move, perhaps even just a Heaven Saint Master is enough to handle Yang Yutian. It's a pity that after the battle between the three 1,000 years ago, the Bloodsword sect retired from the continent. It's as if the entire organization had suddenly vanished. They can't be found no matter how you look. Since it's impossible to find the Bloodsword sect, why don't we request for the other two assassination organizations? After the battle 1,000 years ago, although the Bloodsword sect, the Yamahal and the Underworld sect were all greatly damaged and went into hiding, the Yamahal and the Underworld sect have emerged again in the recent years. They've both just taken a lower profile than before. And our Zhou family already knows several of the places where they can be contacted. Then we might as well get the people from both the Yamahal and the Underworld sect at the same time. We 8 clans don't lack money. As long as they complete the mission, we'll make sure we fulfill them their best of our ability. After all discussions were completed, the people of the 8 clans all departed one by one, returning to their clans through the secret tunnels. In the luxurious estate of the Qing family, the refined, middle-aged man, Qing Jian, currently stood with his head up, gazing at the dark sky. He sighed deeply. Qing Jian's status in the Qing family was quite great. He already knew all about the things that the 8 clans were about to do to Jian Chen, which made him could not help but feel helpless. According to what he originally thought, he wanted to become friends with Jian Chen, and even if he could not become friends, he would definitely not become an enemy of Jian Chen. However, things would often be unexpected. He had never thought that final situation would reach such a severe stage. Jian Chen actually provoked the Tsar family's killing intent. A genius, a true prodigy. A person with unprecedented talent has finally appeared on the continent with so much difficulty, and now his life is to be ended at such a young age. Qing Jian gave out a deep sigh. His face was filled with regret. Chapter 747, The Grand Elder. The next morning, everything that happened at Fragrance River the night before spread throughout the city of God like fire. The news of several unknown Heaven Saint Masters attacking the 8 clans reverberated throughout the city, especially the huge pillar of light that descended from the sky. In the end, it became a hot topic for discussion. For some time, no matter if it were the main streets, alleyways, inns or teahouses, the hubbub of people discussing what happened the night before at Fragrance River could be heard everywhere. Many people expressed different views to the topic, which soon created several versions of what happened, spreading about. The 8 clans who directly caused it did not say anything on the matter, and all remained silent. Today, a figure shot towards the depths of the city of God like a lightning bolt, arriving outside the Radiant Saint Master Union headquarters, floating in the air. The person was a white-robed, middle-aged man. He possessed a medium stature, while his head full of long hair was untied. It draped backwards rather casually, gently swaying in the breeze. His facial features were well-defined, vaguely bearing his handsome appearance when he was still young. His eyes were extremely profound, vast like the starry sky, as if it contained a world inside. His arrival did not alert anybody. Even the people below continued to enter and exit the building, with no one realizing his existence. He seemed to be transparent. The middle-aged man floated before the huge castle of the Union. Gazing towards the highest tower, he said, "Adami, I've completed what you've requested me to do." At the highest tower that the man looked towards, an old man flew out on something that seemed like a cloud and arrived before the man. The old man was the president of the Union. The president looked at the man with a smile while a sliver of excitement flickered in the depths of his eyes. He said, "You've brought the essence blood of a soaring centipede? How's the quality?" A palm-sized white jade bottle appeared in the man's hand. He said with a smile, "Soaring centipedes are just so rare, especially high-class soaring centipedes. They're even less common. In order to find the soaring centipede you requested, I traveled the entire continent, before finally finding a soaring centipede that matched up to what you wanted on the Arctic continent, colonized by the 100 races. I spent a great effort before finally obtaining some essence blood from them." A sliver of shock flashed across the president's eyes. "How Wu, even with your strength, you spent a great effort in obtaining the essence blood. Perhaps there were powerful people who interfered on the Arctic continent?" The man chuckled, "I met a few elders of the war god Hall on the continent. Though, we didn't end up fighting. That soaring centipede was rather strong though. It already evolved 7 colors, and it was at least as powerful as a 5th heavenly layer Saint King, also possessing its bloodline technique. I battled for 3 days and 3 nights with it, before finally obtaining some essence blood. This is from a 7-colored soaring centipede, so it should be enough to recover from being poisoned." "What? The essence blood of a 7-colored soaring centipede?" A sliver of joy flashed across the president's eyes and he hurriedly followed up, "The essence blood from a 7-colored soaring centipede is much more potent than that from a 6-colored soaring centipede. With this bottle of blood, poison is no longer a problem. How Wu, you've really helped us out greatly this time." "Adami, don't put it like that. How can it be compared to saving my daughter's life? Alright, since the item has been delivered, I shall be leaving first." As he spoke, he gazed into the distance of the city of God. There was a sliver of complicated emotions in his eyes. The president hesitated slightly before saying, "How Wu, you might not be at the Holy Empire, but you probably understand the situation with the Holy Empire very well. Won't you show some resistance and prevent what the Tsar family is currently doing? Do you really wish to see the Holy Empire fall into infighting? After all, this once was your home." The man sighed gently. His expression was extremely complicated. "How Wu, although so many years have passed, she still loves you dearly. You perhaps may be the only person who can change her decision. You should go talk to her," the president said earnestly. The man closed his eyes in some pain and waved his hand. "Adami, you should stop mentioning it. I'm ashamed to see her. It's me who is unworthy of her." The president sighed. "How Wu, if you don't go and intervene, perhaps my Radiant Saint Master Union will change owners after 100 years. Her intentions are not just swallowing the other 2 great clans. Adami, if she really moves against the Union, I will stop her." With that, the man did not stay any longer, turning around and flying out of the city of God. The president gazed deeply at the man as he disappeared into the distance. After a long while, he sighed at the SK. He carried a helpless expression, and entered the tower once again. At the same time, around 50 kilometers from the Union headquarters, a middle-aged beauty in a dark green dress floated silently at an altitude of several kilometers. She stared into the distance with her slender eyes, displaying a complex expression. "It's been 3,000 years. 3,000 years. A whole 3,000 years. How Wu, have you really not come to see me, not even once? Do you know that even though you've made me heartbroken before, I've never hated you? I've really never hated you. I only hate the senior members of the clan. They prevented us from being together. If it were not for their interference, I would never do such things. How Wu, since you're unwilling to see me, I can only force you to see me in 100 years." The president directly entered the Union headquarters with the jade bottle of 7-colored soaring centipede essence blood. He went to a room in the depths of the building, and as soon as he opened the large door to the room, a warm, white light immediately poured out from inside. In the center of the room, there was a large bed, where a white-haired, wrinkle-faced old man currently slept in. By the side of the bed, there was a white-robed Radiant Saint Master with a purple badge, constantly gathering and pouring Radiant Saint force into the old man. Towards the walls in the room, there were another 4 white-robed radiant Saint Masters, all sitting on the ground, cross-legged and eyes closed. They all possessed purple badges too, and were actually all Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. Elder Ma, you should stop for now. I've brought the essence blood of a soaring centipede. The poison in the Grand Elder's body can finally be neutralized. As soon as the president entered the room, he spoke out. Hearing that, the Radiant Saint Master who constantly gathered Radiant Saint Force stopped. A sliver of exhaustion appeared on his face, but it was soon replaced by joy. Wonderful, the Grand Elder finally can be cured now. The 4 other Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters who sat by the walls recovering, all opened their eyes at the same time. They looked at each other, each revealing expressions of joy. At this moment, the old man who slept in the bed slowly opened his eyes. He said powerlessly, an old bag of bones, has really caused quite a lot of trouble. The soaring centipede is a beast of antiquity and the total amount of them present on the Tianyuan continent can be counted on one hand, so high-class soaring centipedes are even rarer. President, you must have paid a great price to obtain this essence blood. Grand Elder, you are the pillar of support for the Union. The Union is willing to pay an even greater price to save you. Come, consume the essence blood and let's purge the poison from your body. The president opened the bottle lid and slowly fed the Grand Elder the blood. As soon as the blood from the bottle came in contact with his mouth, the Grand Elder's complexion finally took a turn for the better. The poison in his body was currently receding quickly. Soon enough, the Grand Elder drank all the blood in the bottle. The president placed down the jade bottle and formed a weird hand seal in front of him. With a deep voice, he cried out, "Divine healing." A huge, 2-meter-wide pillar of light descended from the sky, completely enveloping the Grand Elder who was on the bed. It worked with the essence blood of the soaring centipede, purging the poison in the Grand Elder's body. The situation lasted for an hour, before the giant pillar of light finally disappeared. The president opened his eyes as he would normally and looked towards the Grand Elder on the bed with concern. How is it? Has the poison been completely purged? At this current moment, the Grand Elder had a healthy glow. He seemed to be energetic and brimming with vitality, as if he was a completely different person altogether when compared to his previous ill complexion. The Grand Elder sat up in the end and revealed an expression of joy from recovering from the illness. He said, "The poison that's bothered me for so many years is finally gone. Soaring centipede poison really is strong, no wonder it's ranked second among all the poisons. Unless there was the essence blood, even Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters would not have been able to cure me. Congratulations on the Grand Elder making a full recovery." The 5 other Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters all arrived before him and congratulated him. They all carried unconcealable joy. Radiant Saint Force was unable to rid of such powerful poison. In the past few years, the poison in the Grand Elder's body was forcefully suppressed by 5 Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters with Radiant Saint Force as they took turns, preventing it from spreading. This was the reason why the Grand Elder could survive until today. Grand Elder, you've only just recovered. You should spend a few days to recuperate. The president said. The Grand Elder nodded with a smile. President, although I've spent this period of time in bed, I still know some things about what happened outside. I heard that an unprecedented prodigy appeared in our union not long ago. I have to see him after a few days. Mentioning Yang Yutian, the president could not help but reveal a sliver of happiness. Towards his new disciple, he was extremely satisfied. Last night, Yang Yutian was embroiled in an intense battle. He's overexerted himself, so he might need a few days to recover. Grand Elder, you should first recuperate a little without worrying too much. When Yang Yutian comes out, I'll personally let you go see him. Chapter 748, Coming out of seclusion 2 days later, in a room within the Radiant Saint Master Union headquarters, Jian Chen who sat on a cushion slowly opened his eyes. That very moment, a visible spark literally flashed across his eyes, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Shortly afterwards, Jian Chen's eyes, which were bright like lanterns, gradually dimmed, and recovered to how they were before. After 2 days of recovery, I've finally completely recovered from casting God's descent. And I seem to feel that my soul has become stronger. Even my presence has increased from the original 15 kilometers to 20 kilometers. Jian Chen mumbled to himself on the cushion. Shortly afterwards, everything that had happened 2 days ago on the ferry flashed past his eyes. It caused Jian Chen's neutral expression to become rather cold, and he tightly clenched his 2 hands that were placed on his knees. A vicious sliver of light flashed across his eyes and he growled, 8 clans, I remember what you did that night. I will come looking for you to pay back several-fold one day. It won't be far away. No matter if it was Jian Chen or the president of the union, they all knew very well that the black-clothed assassins were people of the 8 clans when around 30 of them attacked the ferry. Jian Chen knew even better that it was only the 8 clans attempting to test him, to find out his true strength. Originally, they did not intend to kill him, but when the strength Jian Chen demonstrated became stronger and stronger, the people of the 8 clans also felt more and more threatened. This was why they ended up wanting to kill Jian Chen. The anger in Jian Chen's mind lasted for a while, before finally calming down. He muttered, after that battle 2 days ago, my understanding of radiant arts has increased, especially towards Judgment's sword and God's descent. Although it's not the true thing, I can now cast them with much greater ease. It's the same with the other arts, and their strength have also increased by quite a bit. I've already grasped the method of casting the Radiant Saint Shield very well. Speaking of which, although the defense of the shield I cast that night was quite strong, the Radiant Saint force within did not seem to be able to perfectly meld together. If I can do that, the strength of the shields should increase even more. Although Jian Chen was a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, his talent in Radiant Arts directly approached Class 7. As a result, he possessed great talent in practicing the arts. With just his own understanding of the arts, he found many problems and shortcomings very quickly. The day of the competition is getting closer and closer by the day. Although I'm extremely confident that I can defeat all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, it'll still be quite troublesome for me to fight several dozen Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters working together, unless I expose my strength as a fighter. There's no need for me to get out so quickly, so I'll just continue my seclusion and do some comprehension. When I fix all the problems I've found, my strength as a Radiant Saint Master will definitely improve by quite a lot. Making up his decision, Jian Chen immediately closed his eyes and continued his comprehension of radiant arts. In the blink of an eye, a dozen or so days had passed. Currently, there was only half a month left before the competition, and an increase in Radiant Saint Masters in the City of God had appeared. They could be seen almost everywhere, with no lack of azure or blue-badged Radiant Saint Masters. Currently, almost all the high-class Radiant Saint Masters scattered across the Holy Empire and those from the other 2 capital cities had gathered in one area. It brought a high to the Union, which happened once every 50 years. Today, the room in which Jian Chen had gone into seclusion slowly opened. The white-robed Jian Chen slowly walked out from inside, and compared to a dozen or so years ago, Jian Chen seemed even more ordinary, though he seemed to possess a special air about him. Combined with his snow-white robes, Jian Chen carried a sage-like bearing. Just as Jian Chen exited the room, a series of soft steps sounded in the distance. It was the white-robed 9th Elder, who walked towards Jian Chen with a smile. His gaze towards Jian Chen carried unconcealed admiration. Yang Yutian, you've finally come out. Come with me quickly to go see the president. The president has waited for you for several days already. The 9th Elder said warmly. Yes, 9th Elder. Jian Chen replied and glanced at Xiao Bai, who lay on his shoulder, before quickly following behind the 9th Elder. In the period of seclusion, Jian Chen never forgot to feed the white tiger. However, after feeding Xiao Bai a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource 2 days ago, the tiger had fallen asleep. Jian Chen understood slightly that perhaps the tiger was about to break through to Class 6. After all, the tiger had stopped at the peak of Class 5 for quite a while already. Yang Yutian, other than seeing the president, there is also the Grand Elder of the Union. Although you're the disciple of the president, you must be respectful in front of the Grand Elder. On the way, the ninth elder said sternly to Jian Chen. Yang Yutian understand. Jian Chen replied with a soft voice. The ninth elder continued, the Grand Elder is the pillar of support for the Union. He possesses strength only second to the president. Even the vice president is not as strong as the Grand Elder. Ninth elder, just how strong is the Grand Elder? And how strong is Master? Jian Chen experienced a wave of curiosity. This question had already dwelled in his mind for a very long time, because he discovered that even though all the elders of the Union were class 7, there was a great disparity between them. The ninth elder looked at Jian Chen and said, Yang Yutian, we primarily use radiant arts to distinguish the strength of class 7 radiant Saint Masters. Do you still remember the place where you took the second test? That place is where we accurately test the strength of radiant Saint Master. You drew over 40% of the radiant Saint force from the barrier, approaching 50%, so your talent for radiant arts was approaching class 7. You were also much more powerful than regular class 6 radiant Saint Masters, because if you want to draw out 50% of the radiant Saint force in the seal, only class 7 radiant Saint Masters with a sliver of origin energy can do that. As for the 14th elder and me, we can only draw out 50%, so our strength is still at the 5th level. The 5th elder that you've seen is much stronger than the 14th elder and me. He can draw out 60%, and has already reached the 6th level. Then what level has Master reached? Jian Chen stared at the 9th elder in interest. A sliver of admiration appeared in the 9th elder's eyes. The president is the most powerful person in the entire Union. He has already reached the 10th level, and if not for the untraversable ditch to reaching class 8, perhaps the president would have reached class 8 long ago. As for the Grand Elder, he is the second strongest in the Union, only second to the president. He has already reached the 9th level. Below the Grand Elder, there is the vice president, the 2nd, 3rd and 4th elders. They've all reached the 7th level. Though, I heard that the vice president has almost broken through the 7th level. As for the remaining elders, they are all at the 5th or 6th level. With that, the 9th elder looked towards Jian Chen. Jian Chen, do you understand how strength is distinguished between radiant Saint Masters now? Jian Chen nodded his head. Then that means that I am currently at the peak of the 4th level, only a step away from the 5th level? Correct. In the competition half a month away, you have to obtain a place in the top 10 no matter what, Yang Yutian, and then enter the Saint Artifact to obtain a sliver of origin energy. Only with that origin energy can you reach class 7 successfully. As for this energy, it disperses naturally in the world, so it can only be obtained in the Saint Artifact. This is the only way to reach class 7, but it's not easy to obtain the origin energy. Alright, we're here. Yang Yutian, you should go in. The president and the Grand Elder are currently waiting for you inside. The 9th elder stopped before the door and did not enter. Jian Chen walked in and arrived in a room that was extravagantly decorated. In the center, there was a tea table, and 2 white-robed old men currently sat facing each other, conversing with a smile. One of them was the president of the Union, to no surprise. Jian Chen's arrival naturally attracted their attention. The president said to the old man next to him, Grand Elder, this is the genius who's recently appeared, as well as the 3rd disciple I've taken, Yang Yutian. Yang Yutian, this is the Grand Elder of the Union. Why don't you quickly greet the Grand Elder? Yang Yutian greets the Grand Elder. Jian Chen immediately bowed towards the old man. After understanding the Grand Elder's strength from the 9th elder, Jian Chen no longer dared to link the old man to regular class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. This was because there were also huge disparities between Radiant Saint Masters, similar to 1st Heaven Layer and 9th Heavenly Layer Saint Rulers. The difference was extremely huge. The Grand Elder's gaze landed on Jian Chen, and he examined him. Shortly afterwards, his expression froze and a certain light flashed across his eyes. He laughed, not bad, Not bad at all. He really is a dragon among men. The president chuckled aloud, my disciple's talent is absolutely extraordinary. Not only has he obtained the 3 great radiant arts, he even cast Judgment's sword and God's descent. Although the power of the 2 arts was greatly reduced due to the lack of origin energy, he still discovered a method. This is extremely rare. A sliver of shock immediately flashed across the Grand Elder's eyes. He could not help but closely examine Jian Chen, while the light in his eyes constantly flickered. This was because on Jian Chen, he could feel an extremely weak sliver of the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force. Other than him, even the president was unable to sense it, because the sliver of origin energy belonged to him. Chapter 749, The Tsar Family's Invitation. Yang Yutian, come and sit next to Master. Master does not have much time to live anymore and can only live for another 100 years. To be able to accept a disciple like you in my remaining life, I can die without regrets. The president was melancholy. He did not have much time left, unless he reached class 8. Jian Chen sat down beside the president. The president looked at Jian Chen and said, Yang Yutian, other than calling you here to see the Grand Elder, there's something else I need to tell you about. The president's expression slowly became solemn and he continued, the Tsar family of the City of God has wild ambitions. Not only do they want to absorb the other 2 clans, the Union has also joined their list of things to possess. A few days ago, when the Grand Elder was out traveling, he was injured by a mysterious person. Not only was he heavily poisoned, he also encountered many unknown experts who tried to kill him. In the end, he went through many twists and turns before returning to the City of God, and has only just recovered. I have always suspected that the Tsar family was responsible for this. For now, there is me guarding this place, so they won't go overboard for some time. But after I pass away in 100 years' time, they will probably move against the Union. As for your existence, it possesses as a huge obstacle for the Tsar family. Although they make little of your strength, you will probably reach my current level in 100 years. As a result, the Tsar family will probably move against you. In this period of time, you should stay in the City of God and not go traveling. In the city, we can ensure your safety at all times. Jian Chen became slightly heavy-hearted. He said, yes, Master, disciple understands. Alright, I've told you what I need to tell you. You can go and properly prepare for the competition in half a month's time. You have to place within the top 10. Only by reaching class 7 can you pose a threat to Saint Kings. Although the price will be quite big, this is the only way you can handle Saint Kings. The president waved his hand and dismissed Jian Chen. Jian Chen stood up and bowed towards the president, before leaving. Just as Jian Chen left, the Grand Elder looked towards the president. President, you don't have much time left. We need to increase our pace with the plan. Once you reach class 8, our Radiant Saint Master Union will greatly strengthen. The president sighed gently. He looked at the ceiling and his expression was rather complicated. Ever since the ancient times, there has been no one who has reached class 8. The past presidents of the Union have thought up countless ideas, and they've all failed. Reaching class 8 is just too difficult. Also, I have a feeling that perhaps I will never reach class 8 in this life. No matter what, this is the only chance after all. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work. We still have to try it. The Grand Elder said with a soft voice. The battle between the 3 clans will probably begin after the Saint Artifact is activated. Let's proceed with the plan after their battle has subsided. If I fail in the end, I'll use my life as a price and cast the forbidden arte to rid the Union of its threat. Determination appeared in the president's eyes. Jian Chen owned his own house in the headquarters. After leaving from where the president was, he had returned to the house and currently, he sat cross-legged on the bed silently, in deep thought. The Tsar family wanted to move against the Union, while he himself had become the greatest obstruction that prevented the Tsar family from gaining control of the Union. He had become one of their targets, soon to be killed. Jian Chen had never anticipated something like this. Currently, the development of the situation had already exceeded what he expected. It's not like anyone knows my true identity. If push comes to pull, I'll just leave the City of God directly after I reach Class 7. I'll just assume my identity as a fighter, and after I possess enough strength, I'll reveal my identity as a Radiant Saint Master to the Tsar family. When that happens, I will possess the power that can even cause dread to the Union. Jian Chen thought to himself. At this moment, someone knocked the door outside. Jian Chen focused his gaze and immediately stopped thinking. He looked towards the door and said, "Come in." When the door opened, a white-robed old man walked in from outside. It was the Grand Elder of the Union. Jian Chen's expression froze. He immediately stood up and bowed courteously. Yang Yutian greets the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder gently closed the door and stared at Jian Chen in wonder. Shortly afterwards, he gently waved his hand, and an purple metal immediately flew out from Jian Chen's space ring, landing in his hand. The situation immediately surprised Jian Chen. The scene of when he first obtained the purple metal quickly flashed across his mind, causing him to become cautious. The Grand Elder gently rubbed the purple metal, while the wonder in his eyes increased. He asked unhurriedly, "Yang Yutian, I wonder where you obtained this metal from." "Grand Elder, this was something I once found on a rotting corpse in a magical beast forest." "Perhaps Grand Elder recognizes this item?" Jian Chen spoke carefully. However, he stared fixedly at the Grand Elder's expression, observing any changes. In Jian Chen's mind, he could not help but think back to the situation when he first obtained the purple metal. The metal was gifted to him by a mysterious old man in a carriage. Jian Chen did not see the old man, but instead felt a profound presence from the man. Afterwards, he had guessed at that time the old man was definitely heavily injured, from the constant coughing that followed. And now, connecting it with the fact that the Grand Elder had been poisoned a few years ago, Jian Chen was almost certain that the old man who had given him the metal was the Grand Elder. If his identity was exposed, the fact that he was a fighter would be exposed too. This was something extremely bad. At least, it was very possible that he would lose the opportunity to reach Class 7. The Grand Elder stared at Jian Chen with a forced smile. "Of course I recognize this item. This was originally mine." In the Grand Elder's mind, he slowly thought back to the scene a few years ago. At that time, he was first poisoned, then heavily injured by several experts. In the end, although he repelled the people, he was unable to suppress the speed at which the poison spread throughout his body. He was unable to use Radiant Saint Force to fly, so he concealed his tracks and disguised himself as a merchant, hiring a few mercenaries to escort him. Once he arrived at somewhere safe, he used the communication jade to contact the Union. Afterwards, the president personally came to take him back safely to the City of God. However, during his journey, he met a young man. Although the young man was very weak, he felt that the young man's future would definitely be very great from intuition, a man among dragons. As a result, he left him the purple metal. The metal was something that represented his identity, and also contained a sliver of his Radiant Saint Force origin energy. It was for the future, that if destiny allowed it, when they met again. Right now, not only did the Grand Elder discover the purple metal he had originally given away on Jian Chen, he could see the shadow of the young man he had met years ago on Jian Chen's face. Jian Chen immediately felt rather uneasy. He did not fear the Grand Elder, but rather, he feared that his identity would be exposed, foiling his plans and efforts. "Grand Elder, since this metal belongs to you, let's return it to you today," Jian Chen said cautiously, while he stared fixedly at the Grand Elder for any changes in emotion. Although Jian Chen currently felt extremely anxious, he seemed calm as ever. Even his gaze when he observed the Grand Elder's expression remained extremely normal. The Grand Elder gently examined the metal, before looking at Jian Chen. "I gave this away years ago. Since you've obtained it through chance, it means that you are fated to be connected to the metal. It's best if you keep the metal. Although it's not very precious, it contains a sliver of my radiant saint force origin energy inside. Once you reach class 7, you should have uses for the medal, because there are other abilities to it. It can contain some origin energy. The Grand Elder passed the purple medal to Jianchen once again, before striding away. When he arrived at the door, his footstep paused slightly, looking at Jianchen once again. He said, "Yang Yutian, I hope you don't forget the president of the union is your master." The relationship between the two of you may not be very deep, but the president values you very much and has high hopes, and more importantly, he treats you as the future pillar of support for the union. Don't make us disappointed. With that, the Grand Elder walked away. Jianchen's complexion immediately began to vary. What the Grand Elder said before he left echoed in his mind. He was not sure whether the Grand Elder had realized his identity, but it made Jianchen constantly ponder what it meant. The next day, a white-robed, middle-aged man found Jianchen and said, "Esteemed Master Yang Yutian, the patriarch of the Tsar family invites you to visit the clan as a guest." The Tsar family. Hearing that, Jianchen furrowed his eyebrows slightly. The light in his eyes flickered slightly and he said, "I understand, you can leave." After the middle-aged man left, Jianchen's complexion immediately became overcast. After pondering slightly, he said, "Although the Tsar family has ill intention towards me, we still haven't reached that step between us. Also, the Tsar family is the true ruler of the City of God and can't be compared to the 8 clans. Since they have invited me today, they shouldn't try to harm me. If I don't go, perhaps it'll just worsen our relationship ahead of time. Whatever, I guess I have to go. I better tell Master before I go though, just in case." At the same time, in a mountain range several millions of kilometers away, 5 messy-haired old men sat cross-legged in a cave. "God damn it, those 4 protectors from the Bloodsword sect really do linger. They've chased us for so long and still aren't willing to let us go." An old man swore angrily. Anger covered his face, while on his body, there was a spine-chilling wound. The 4 protectors possess very powerful baleful force. As soon as they use it against us, we'll die for sure. We can't tangle with them anymore. If this continues, not only will we fail the Tiger King's mission, we'll die to the 4 protectors. We can't drag it out anymore. We need to quickly find Jianchen. Once we finish the Tiger King's mission, we'll leave here with the 2 other Class 7 monster cores. I have the blood of Jianchen's parents. Situ, use the blood as a lead to cast the Great Soothsaying Technique. Chapter 750, the Tsar family. Old man Situ accepted the 2 droplets of blood. Afterwards, he fused the 2 droplets together, and placed it in the center of his eyebrows. As soon as the blood droplet came in contact with his brow, it disappeared immediately. Old man Situ closed his eyes. A while later, he suddenly opened them, and a dazzling gleam of light exploded in his eyes. He yelled deeply, "With my soul as the path and the blood as the lead, with the energy of the world, the Great Soothsaying Technique." A red light shot out from between his eyebrows. Under the control of old man Situ's mind, it drew an extremely mysterious, blood-red image. Profound chi of the mysteries of the world flowed about the image and shortly afterwards, it turned into a dark red, 5-pointed star, disappearing back into old man Situ's forehead. The Great Soothsaying Technique was special. It was discovered by the 5 of them in the cave of a Saint King several hundred years ago. All 5 of them had tried comprehending it, but only old man Situ grasped some of the bare basics of the technique. The Great Soothsaying Technique was not used to attack. It was used to forecast the future, a technique similar to divining. However, old man Situ's comprehension of the Great Soothsaying Technique was still at a beginner's level, only able to utilize some of the basics. This included searching for certain people throughout the boundless continent with the use of some special equipment or items. Old man Situ shut his eyes tightly. His rosy complexion paled at a rate visible with the naked eye. He stayed like this for 15 minutes, before snapping open an eyes, "City of God, the Holy Empire. Let's go to the Holy Empire immediately. Otherwise, the 4 protectors from the Bloodsword sect will come looking for us soon. The hiding technique we got from that Saint King cave is useless against the 4 of them. Old Man Matting said with a deep voice. This cannot be delayed. Move out immediately. In the depths of the Cross Mountains concealed a huge palace, known to exist by few. At this moment, a burly, fierce-looking middle-aged man currently sat on the cold floor within a decorated room. His complexion was overcast. He was one of the 2 kings of the Gilligan clan, the Tiger King. My strength has fallen from the 2nd heavenly layer to the 1st as a Saint King, and I can't recover it in a short period of time. Stepping out of the depths of the mountains this time has actually made me pay such a heavy price. The Tiger King clenched his fists tightly as he gnashed his teeth in anger. My strength might have decreased, but if I can complete the ruler's mission, everything is worth it. The ruler will definitely not mistreat me. A sliver of interest flashed across his eyes and he continued, the growth of the winged tiger god's a little unexpected. I can't drag this out for too long, or else once the winged tiger god really does become powerful, it'll be hard to deal with. I wonder if Old Man Situ's group is successful or not. I'll give them another month, and if they don't succeed in that time, I can only report the developments to the ruler. A sliver of determination flashed across the Tiger King's eyes. At this very moment, a white-robed, middle-aged scholar suddenly appeared in the room. He stared at the Tiger King with a complicated expression. Is it really worth it? The winged tiger god is the god of the beast race and is paramount. Only under its leadership did our beast race become so prosperous. The ruler is already committing a monstrous crime by doing things like this. The Tiger King stared coldly at the middle-aged scholar and said expressionlessly, Pen King, we, the beast race, only needs the existence of the ruler to be prosperous. The current times is not like the ancient age where experts were as common as forests. Before us, the beast god continent, the Tian Yuan continent is too weak to put up a fight. Tiger King, you must not underestimate the experts of the Tian Yuan continent. On the continent, there are also humans who can fight against the ruler. The scholar said. The Tiger King sneered and a sliver of disdain appeared in his eyes. Are you talking about that traitor of the pure cleansing heart pavilion, that person who spends his days in the 7 emotions and 6 desires? How is he the ruler's opponent? Tiger King, the news of the winged tiger god has already been received by the ancestor of my Pen clan on the beast god continent. There is still time for you to turn back. The scholar said. Looks like your Pen clan has chosen to stand with the winged tiger god. I must persuade you, there's still time for you to change your time. Otherwise, once the ruler successfully obtains the winged tiger god, your Pen clan will be facing a devastating calamity. The Tiger King replied coldly. Hearing that, the scholar sighed gently. He did not say anything else as his figure slowly disappeared from the room. In the Holy Empire, there was a luxurious carriage bearing the symbol of the Radiant Saint Master Union, rolling down the wide streets of the City of God. Within the carriage, the white-robed Jian Chen sat with the small white tiger on his lap, eyes closed, resting. Beside him was his bodyguard, Yang Ling. The heavy injuries sustained by Yang Ling back on the ferry had been healed personally by an elder of the Union, so he had already fully recovered. Currently, he sat coldly within the carriage, silently protecting Jian Chen. In the jolting carriage, Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes. He looked at Yang Ling and said, Mr. Yang Ling, I wonder how long has it been since you reached the 6th cycle as a Heaven Saint Master? Esteemed Master Yang Yutian, Yang Ling has already stopped at the 6th cycle for close to a century. Yang Ling replied emotionlessly, but in his gaze towards Jian Chen, it contained unconcealed respect. A century. Jian Chen mumbled to himself in shock. That was around 4 times his current age. Yang Ling, I believe that you'll break through and reach Saint Ruler without much more time. Jian Chen said with a smile. Currently, Yang Ling held a status vastly different from before in his heart. Yang Ling's expression became gloomy. How would it be so easy to reach Saint Ruler? There's so many people on the Tianyuan continent, as well as quite a few prodigies. But just how many of them become Saint Rulers? Jian Chen paused for a while. Mr. Yang Ling, if I get the chance in the future, I want to find a method to help you out. Hearing that, Yang Ling's interest was piqued, as a gleam of light flashed across his eyes. A sliver of joy appeared in the depths of his eyes. To him, what Jian Chen had said meant that he would ask for a Saint Ruler to come and direct him after he had reached Class 7. The luxurious carriage rolled through the large streets of the city, before finally stopping before a grand manor. The manor was extremely large, although it was not as grand as the headquarters of the Union. It radiated with a thick, ancient presence, as if the manor was not a manor, but rather an old man who had lived for countless years and experienced the changings of time. It could deeply affect the mood of people. At the main entrance to the manor, 10 silver-armored guards stood like statues, without moving at all. Each of them possessed the strength of an Earth Saint Master. Above the main entrance hung a huge plaque high up above. 2 words were written elegantly on the plaque, Tsar Family. Here was the #1 clan of the City of God, as well as one of the 3 great clans that controlled the Holy Empire, the Tsar clan. It was an owner of one of the 7 capital cities on the continent. Are you perhaps Master Yang Yutian? Just as Jian Chen dismounted from the carriage, an ancient voice echoed from within the manor. A blue-robed old man walked out from inside. His tone was warm, without any arrogance, while his 2 eyes flickered with a wise light, constantly examining Jian Chen. Jian Chen clasped his eyes at the old man. I am indeed Yang Yutian. I have come to visit under the esteemed patriarch's request. The old man chuckled. This old servant, the secondary caretaker of the Tsar clan, greets Master Yang Yutian. Master Yang Yutian, the patriarch is already waiting in the main hall. Please come along with me. Then I'll be troubling the caretaker to lead the way. Jian Chen's actions and words were learned and refined. He was not arrogant or reckless, not humble or pushy. Even though he had come to the greatest clan in the City of God, he remained unperturbed, calm as ever. Witnessing this, the secondary caretaker could not help but nod secretly in his mind. This Yang Yutian really is something else. Jian Chen and Yang Ling followed the caretaker into the Tsar family. Afterwards, they passed through various rooms under the caretaker's lead, before finally arriving in the central, majestic hall. At the very end of the hall sat a middle-aged man in purple and gold robes. He was the patriarch of the Tsar clan, and beneath him, various people of different ages sat in 2 rows. Jian Chen stood in the center of the hall and clasped his hands at the middle-aged man in ease. Yang Yutian greets the patriarch. A gleam of light flashed across the patriarch's eyes. He closely observed Jian Chen, before slowly revealing the sliver of a smile on his face. I have heard that Master Yang Yutian's talent is unprecedented, and was also accepted as the Union President's 3rd disciple long ago. Seeing you today, Brother Yang Yutian indeed is a dragon among men. Please sit. The Tsar family patriarch did not act pretentious at all, receiving Jian Chen in a way where they were completely equal. This was because the Tsar family patriarch knew very well that the Tsar family and the Radiant Saint Master Union were basically existences of the same level. His status as the patriarch in the Tsar family was not even as great as Jian Chen's status in the Radiant Saint Union. The patriarch of the Tsar clan was not someone who held power, but was only a spokesman. He was basically a caretaker, completely abiding to his master's orders, as well as handling some everyday household chores. Chapter 751, The Grand Elder of the Tsar Family. In the Tsar family, the patriarch was only a spokesperson. Although he possessed some status, he did not possess much power and could not really make decisions crucial to the Tsar family. Once something major happened, or if they needed to do something major, the patriarch would need to report to the elders which stand above. The elders of the Tsar family were split into 2 groups. The internal elders of the Tsar family are all senior members of the clan, people who possess power to do things. If their opinions come to agreement, they can essentially determine all crucial things of the Tsar family, as well as control all movements of the clan. As for the external elders, they were formed from a few experts, of the Tsar family as well as people who were invited from elsewhere. These outer elders possessed a certain status and could enjoy generous treatments from the clan, but they did not really possess any power. Jian Chen had learned about these groups of the Tsar clan from the president of the union before he had come. This was why he had some rough understandings as to how the largest clan in the City of God functioned. Jian Chen sat down in an empty seat to the side. Afterwards, he conversed with the people sitting in the hall slightly, and after a series of exchanges and introductions, Jian Chen also learned that all the people sitting in the hall were part of the high-ranking management of the Tsar family. Just at this moment, the patriarch's expression became serious. He stared at Jian Chen with keen eyes and said, "Master Yang Yutian, this time inviting you to our Tsar family as a guest is actually because we have something important we want to discuss with Master Yang Yutian." Hearing that, Jian Chen understood that they had finally reached the main topic of conversation. His expression also became slightly stern and said with his hands clasped, "I wonder what the patriarch has to discuss with me." The patriarch smiled. "Unprecedented prodigies like Master Yang Yutian are admirable to all of our inner elders. For this, our elders even held a discussion together and decided in the end that they hope Master Yang Yutian can become an internal elder of my Tsar clan and enjoy the power and status. I wonder how Master Yang Yutian feels about it." After he finished what he was saying, the patriarch stared fixedly at Jian Chen. Slivers of anticipation appeared in the depths of his eyes. "I must thank the Tsar family for their great kindness, but I've already become a core member of the Radiant Saint Master Union, and the president's even taken me as his disciple. If I join your Tsar family now, it might be rather inappropriate." Jian Chen said at ease. He did not care at all whether his decision would offend the Tsar family or not. "Master Yang Yutian, you must think this through. This is the first time ever since the founding of the clan that my Tsar family is allowing a person who is not a part of the family become an internal elder by inviting you. My Tsar family really views you with importance." The Tsar family patriarch explained. Jian Chen said apologetically, "Patriarch, I really must apologize. Unless I gain Master's consent, it'll be extremely difficult for me to become an internal elder of the Tsar family." AI. The patriarch sighed gently and no longer said anything. Suddenly, his expression changed and revealed a sliver of respect, before quickly recovering. He said to Jian Chen, "Master Yang Yutian, the Grand Elder wishes to see you. Please come with me." With that, the patriarch directly exited the hall. A light of interest flickered in Jian Chen's eyes as he hesitated slightly. Shortly afterwards, he followed up behind the patriarch closely, while his bodyguard Yang Ling was kept back in the hall. Following the patriarch, Jian Chen traveled towards the back courtyard without any obstructions. Within the clan, Jian Chen did not see any patrolling guards, but instead felt several strong presences. They were all at least Earth Saint Masters, even with some Heaven Saint Masters in between. When Jian Chen walked past a grand hall, he had even felt the presence of a saint ruler who had already reached the third heavenly layer. Jian Chen knew that all the strength he had seen was only the tip of the iceberg for the Tsar family. To be able to occupy the City of God, as well as have one of the 8 great kingdoms as a subsidiary nation, the Tsar family definitely had much more than this little bit of power. Jian Chen followed behind the patriarch, entering a palace in the back of the clan. Finally, they stopped in a guest room, and in the center of the room, a ruddy old man sat next to a table, drinking tea at leisure. The old man wore white robes, while his white hair was tied into a bun on his head. He gave off an ancient feeling around him, and seemed slightly sage-like. "I greet the Grand Elder." The patriarch bowed towards the old man with an expression of respect. "You can go," the Grand Elder said expressionlessly, without even looking at the patriarch. "Yes, sir." Before the Grand Elder, the patriarch of the family seemed to show great respect. He bowed deeply towards the Grand Elder again, before backing off with gentle steps. After the patriarch left, the Grand Elder finally raised his head. His gaze landed on Jian Chen and he said with a dull voice, "You're Yang Yutian?" Jian Chen clasped his hands, but just when he wanted to speak, his expression suddenly changed. The Grand Elder began to give off an invisible force, like a mountain, forcefully pushing down on Jian Chen. It caused Jian Chen to lose all mobility, and even his two legs bowed slightly, forcing him down to kneel on the ground. "You still don't have the right for me to kneel." Flames of anger exploded in Jian Chen's heart. In that very moment, his gaze became sharp, and a light exploded in his eyes. The surrounding radiant saint force quickly gathered towards him, forming a silvery armor that clad every inch of his body at lightning speed. It radiated with a dazzling white light, resisting the great pressure. With the formation of the radiant saint armor, the pressure on Jian Chen's body suddenly lessened by a lot. His bent legs immediately straightened out, and his gaze towards the Grand Elder also increased in hostility. This Grand Elder should be at least a sixth heavenly layer saint ruler. Jian Chen thought to himself. However, he did not feel any fear at all. A sliver of interest flashed across the Grand Elder's eyes. He gazed towards Jian Chen, now carried an additional hint of admiration, and the invisible force given off by him abruptly increased. Jian Chen began to tremble violently. His legs, which he had just straightened out, began to bend again. In that moment, he felt like the thing above him was not a mountain, but a metal mountain, a mountain entirely made from metal. Crack! A crack appeared on Jian Chen's radiant Saint Master armor. Shortly afterwards, the crack began to expand, slowly covering every inch of the armor before finally breaking, turning into dust and disappearing. Jian Chen clenched his jaw, and forced all the chaotic force in his body back into the chaotic Niden, to hide it. At this very moment, it was extremely easy to expose his secret as a fighter. In order to prevent any accidents, he gave up on the idea of using his chaotic body to resist it. God's protection. Jian Chen cried out with a deep voice and cast the only defensive arte of the three great radiant arts. Immediately, the surrounding radiant saint force began to gather around Jian Chen at an unbelievable speed. Although the Grand Elder had restricted Jian Chen's movements, he was unable to stop Jian Chen from casting radiant arts, as radiant saint force was not something fighters could control. God's protection. Who would have thought that you've even grasped this radiant arte? Looks like you know all three great radiant arts from the Radiant Saint Master Union. The Grand Elder muttered to himself softly, while he carried some shock on his face. God's protection was gathering the radiant saint force in the surroundings and pouring it into the body, allowing the body to become like metal. It did not have any consequential effects either. The vast radiant saint force poured into Jian Chen without any indication of stopping, before finally all fusing with his body. It caused Jian Chen to radiate with a vague white light all over, and the strength of his body began to increase at an unbelievable pace. Although it was far from the chaotic body in toughness, it was the strongest defensive arte for the weak bodies of Radiant Saint Masters. Jian Chen's defense constantly increased. As the powerful Radiant Saint force surged about in his body, it blocked the pressure from the Grand Elder, and his bent legs began to straighten out slowly once again. The Grand Elder revealed a weird light in his eyes and muttered, "Not bad, not bad." As he said those 4 words, the pressure Jian Chen was under abruptly increased by several fold, completely suppressing all the light Jian Chen shone with from God's protection. As for where Jian Chen was standing, a crack had appeared, and constantly began to expand. His 2 feet gradually sank 3 inches into the ground. A sliver of determination appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. He slowly closed them and raised his arms with difficulty, forming a weird seal before his chest. Witness that, the Grand Elder's pupils suddenly constricted. He remembered that it was the hand seal for casting the forbidden arte, God's descent. I definitely can't let him cast God's descent. Although it's not the real thing and cannot harm me at all, the great disturbance caused by it will alert the people in the Union. The Grand Elder thought, before immediately withdrawing the pressure. With the wave of a hand, a gentle force forcefully knocked away the hand seal formed by Jian Chen. He laughed, "Please do not get angry, Master Yang Yutian. Before, I was only testing Brother Yang Yutian's strength and did not have any other intentions. If I have offended you in any shape or form, I wish that Master Yang Yutian can forgive me." Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes. Although he knew that the Grand Elder was testing him, it really made him angry. "I wonder why the Grand Elder has called me here," Jian Chen said coldly. He was not polite at all. Perhaps the Grand Elder understood that what he did before was a little too much, but he did not pay too much attention to Jian Chen's attitude. He laughed, "Master Yang Yutian really is straightforward. Alright, I'll get to the point. Master Yang Yutian, I want you to join my Tsar family and become an internal elder of the clan. The patriarch has already raised this topic. I will probably be disappointing the Grand Elder." Jian Chen's tone was rather icy. The Grand Elder continued, "Master Yang Yutian, I'll be honest. The president of the Radiant Saint Master Union only has 100 years left. Once those 100 years pass, the Radiant Saint Master Union will fall under my Tsar family. If you join my Tsar family as an internal elder, I can promise you that my Tsar clan can give you full authority of the Radiant Saint Master Union, with you as the president and my Tsar family as a powerful supporter. Master Yang Yutian, there is no harm in consider it." The Grand Elder did not hide anything from Jian Chen. Although the whole matter of absorbing the Radiant Saint Master Union could be considered a secret, it was no longer a secret among the larger clans of the City of God. Also, the Grand Elder knew even better that the president of the Union had already become aware of the Tsar family's wild ambitions long ago, so telling this secret to Jian Chen would not affect the plans of the clan at all. Chapter 752, Assassination on the Open Streets. Although Jian Chen knew about the wild ambitions of the Tsar family, he had never thought that the Grand Elder would tell him about it so directly. This made him stunned. However, he knew that the reason why the Tsar family wanted him to join them was to gain control of the Radiant Saint Master Union through him. If they could do that, not only would they gain control of the Union without shedding any blood, they would also gain an expert as strong as the president of the Union, allowing their strength to greatly increase. However, with Jian Chen's personality, he definitely would not become a chess piece in other people's hands. He clasped his hands at the Grand Elder. "Grand Elder, I must thank the clan's good intentions, but Yang Yutian will perhaps be disappointing you." The Grand Elder's gaze immediately began to sharpen, staring at Jian Chen fixedly with his two eyes, like two unsheathed, sharp swords. He raised his voice, "Yang Yutian, are you still unwilling to become an internal elder of the clan?" "Yes." Jian Chen looked into the Grand Elder's eyes. He did not show any fear at all. The two stared at each other fixedly, as if their gazes were sparks, colliding mid-air. This lasted for a while, before the Grand Elder finally retracted his gaze. He sighed gently, "Whatever. Since you're so determined, I will not force you. Yang Yutian, you can leave." Jian Chen left silently. Only the Grand Elder was left in the room, sitting there drinking tea just like how he was before. What a pity, it's really a pity. He's such a prodigy, but not of any use to my Tsar family. A long while later, the Grand Elder gave out a soft sigh. Shortly afterwards, a piece of jade appeared in his hand, which his hand crushed without any hesitation. At the same time, in the 8 clans, the expressions of those in control all changed. They all pulled out a piece of broken jade in their space rings. "Do it." Walking out from the Grand Elder's building, the patriarch that had brought him there had already disappeared. Jian Chen could only go back to the conference hall using his memory. Jian Chen arrived at the hall without any obstructions. There, he saw that all the high-ranking members of the Tsar family had left. Other than the 2 guards in the hall, there was just Yang Ling, who sat there all by himself. A gleam of light flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. In his heart, he already understood that the way the Tsar family treated him was vastly different from before. He said, Mr. Yang Ling, let's go. Yang Ling stood up and walked out of the empty hall. With a cold expression, he followed behind Jian Chen and silently walked towards the main entrance of the Tsar family. No one came out to see them off, much less urge them to stay. Return to the headquarters. Jian Chen and Yang Ling boarded the carriage as Jian Chen said to the horse driver. The luxurious carriage bearing the symbol of the Union turned around and directly traveled towards the headquarters. In the carriage, Jian Chen sat with his head down, in thought, while the light in eyes constantly flickered. As for Jian Chen, he remained expressionless, sitting to one side coldly with his eyes closed, resting. Not only have I rejected the offer of becoming an internal elder, I've also learnt from the Grand Elder of the Tsar family's future plans from this trip to the Tsar family. It's already put me in a position against the Tsar family in some sense. This Tsar family will definitely move against me. I need to be more careful in this period of time. Jian Chen thought to himself. He did not fear the 8 clans, but he needed to be cautious against the Tsar family. After all, the Tsar family was powerful existence akin to an ancient clan. I need to quickly reach Class 7. Once I become a Class 7 Radiant Saint Master, I can leave this place, and I won't need to care about the matters between the Tsar family and the Radiant Saint Master Union. Jian Chen thought to himself. However, he thought of what the Union Grand Elder has said to him in the very end shortly afterwards. Yang Yutian, I hope you don't forget the President of the Union is your master. The relationship between the two of you may not be very deep, but the President values you very much and has high hopes, and more importantly, he treats you as the future pillar of support for the Union. Don't make us disappointed. Thinking up to that, a sliver of hesitation appeared on Jian Chen's face. Just at this moment, the carriage Jian Chen was in began to shake violently. It began to quickly decelerate from its original speed, while a noisy hubbub erupted outside shortly afterwards. Yang Ling, who sat beside Jian Chen and was resting, abruptly opened his eyes and with a flash, he exited the carriage. As for Jian Chen, he sat still in the carriage. He had already observed the outside situation clearly with his presence. At this moment, Yang Ling entered the carriage again. He said, Master Yang Yutian, the carriage was too fast and an accident occurred. A child's been hit. Let's go and have a look. Jian Chen said expressionlessly. Afterwards, he left the carriage together with Yang Ling. He saw that there was a skinny, small girl, roughly 11 or 12 years old, fainted on the ground. Her forehead was wounded, and fresh blood dyed her entire face. She wore inexpensive clothes, clearly not someone wealthy. Beside the girl knelt an average-looking, middle-aged woman in simple clothes, crying aloud, Daughter, my daughter, nothing must happen to you. I only have you, my one daughter. If anything happens to you, how can I continue to live? Seeing this, Jian Chen furrowed his eyebrows slightly. With a gaze of blame, he stared at the horse driver and said, How did you do this? The old man who drove the horses paled slightly and said with a trembling voice, Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, the girl was mischievous. She ran into the center of the road. Sir, please save this little girl is so pitiful. Sir, you can just watch her die. Sir, this pitiful girl was hit by your carriage, you have to save her. There were a lot of passers-by on the street. Very soon, many people gathered in the surroundings, all speaking to Jian Chen. At this moment, the mother of the girl was already on the ground, begging Jian Chen on her hands and knees. She said, Sir, I only have one daughter. She's my lifeblood. I beg you, please save my daughter. If something happens to my daughter, then I don't even want to live anymore. Jian Chen helped the woman to her feet and said softly, Miss, don't worry. I will definitely save your daughter. With that, Jian Chen directly knelt down to where the unconscious girl was. Blood constantly flowed from the girl's head, which had already formed a small pool on the ground. Jian Chen stared at the girl's forehead injury for a while an ineffable light flashed across his eyes. Afterwards, he slowly raised his right hand and a ball of soft radiant saint force slowly gathered around it. The radiant saint force was not gentle, but it carried a certain sharp intent that could only be felt by other radiant saint masters. At that moment, changes began to happen. The mother of the girl gently raised her left hand and placed it on Jian Chen's back. Immediately, a cold qi began to surge violently from the woman's palm, entering Jian Chen's body. At the same time, a dagger had appeared soundlessly in the woman's right hand, slashing at Jian Chen's neck with lightning speed. Everything happened in a flash, without any prior signs. It completely dazed the onlooking bystanders in the surroundings. "Be careful." Yang Ling's pupils constricted, and his gaze immediately became a glare. He yelled aloud to warn Jian Chen, and then shot towards the woman like a lightning bolt. Even though Yang Ling was a heaven saint master, the woman was just too close to Jian Chen. Also, the woman had struck out extremely fast, so Yang Ling was unable to go up and help out in time. Just as the woman was about to cut Jian Chen's throat with the dagger, there was a flash of light, which actually pierced the center of the woman's eyebrows with a speed several-fold faster than the dagger. It was actually the radiant saint force that Jian Chen had gathered in his hand, which was turned into a raindrop-sized ball of light in an instant and shot out. The dagger stopped around 3 inches from Jian Chen's throat. Between the woman's eyebrows, a bloody hole had already appeared. At this moment, Yang Ling also arrived. He struck a palm clad with powerful saint force directly and mercilessly at the woman's back. The woman was immediately sent flying far away. At the same time, the unconscious girl on the ground snapped open her eyes. She opened her small mouth slightly, and a sharp weapon, the size of a sewing needle, shot out from her mouth, directly piercing towards the center of Jian Chen's eyebrows. A light exploded from Jian Chen's eyes. Just when the needle-like weapon from the mouth of the girl was 3 inches away from him, it stopped and slowly fell into his hand under the control of his mind. Surprisingly, it was a finger-sized blade. The blade was completely black, clearly containing poison. Jian Chen stared at the small blade fixedly, while his eyes became brighter and brighter. "You're looking to die." Yang Ling was immediately angered. Vast saint force exploded from his fist, which he threw mercilessly towards the girl on the floor. The girl remained calm. She directly leapt up from the ground and put her palms together, keeping them open slightly. Surging saint force gathered and it collided forcefully with Yang Ling's fist. Boom! With a muffled sound, the surging energy ripples exploded in where the girl and Yang Ling had clashed. It caused the ground to crack. Yang Ling's expression changed slightly. He staggered back a few steps and stared at the girl who seemed to only be 12 or 13. He cried out, "Sixth cycle Heaven Saint Master." Suddenly, a dozen or so of the bystanders rushed in. In their hands were daggers, which they used to stab at Jian Chen. "Master Yang Yutian, be careful, they're assassins." Yang Ling yelled aloud. His expression became stern and a huge, completely red sword appeared in his hand. He rushed directly at the people. Of the dozen or so assassins, 6 of them stopped to obstruct Yang Ling, while the remaining people rushed at Jian Chen. Each of them had cold gazes, but did not even carry a sliver of killing intent. Jian Chen finally looked away from the small blade. He stared at the assassins that rushed towards him with calmly, while the corner of his lips curled into a sneer. He mumbled softly, "Whatever, I might as well test out the strength of my arts." Since the battle on the ferry, Jian Chen had spent a dozen or so days in the headquarters to continue his comprehension of radiant arts, which greatly increased the strength of his arts. Radiance burst. Jian Chen muttered with a low voice. The surrounding radiant saint force immediately began to gather quickly around him. This time, the speed at which it gathered was several times faster than before. In that very moment, Jian Chen's surroundings was full of countless glowing raindrops. Chapter 753, Both assassination organizations have come. Countless droplets gathered around Jian Chen. Each droplet was condensed from powerful radiant saint force, which gave off a sharp intent. Shortly afterwards, the countless droplets turned into streaks of white light under Jian Chen's control, surging at the assassins in the surroundings. The assassins all swung their daggers to resist the attack of the droplets, and for some time, the clangs between the daggers and droplets constantly rang out. A large portion of the assassins were Earth Saint Masters, while the rest were Heaven Saint Masters. Whenever the Earth Saint Masters received the droplets of radiant saint force, their bodies would tremble greatly. The power within the inconspicuous droplets had reached a terrifying level. Arg! An Earth Saint Master assassin was hit by a droplet, which directly punched a hole through his body. From the sharp pain, he could not help but call out, and his hands also paused a little. This led to him being hit by more and more droplets of radiant saint force, until he died. Painful cries sounded one after another, and in just a short moment, all the Earth Saint Masters were dead. All of them had hundreds or thousands of holes punched through their bodies, with the blood dyeing them all over. Currently, there were only 4 Heaven Saint Master who struggled to resist the attacks. However, their advance had already been forcefully halted by the dense droplets. They could not advance at all, and were instead forced into swift retreat by the droplets. Hall Master Feng, when are you going to help out? An assassin called out. A gleam of light flashed across the young girl in the distance. The small blade in Jian Chen's hand seemed to be in her control, immediately flying out of Jian Chen's hand as a silver streak and piercing towards the center of Jian Chen's eyebrows. Jian Chen focused his gaze. Suddenly, a sliver of vague azure and purple light appeared in his eyes, while the small blade controlled by the girl was forcefully stopped before Jian Chen's forehead. Afterwards, immediately turned into a streak of light under Jian Chen's control, with its target being the girl. On the small blade, a sliver of vague azulate sword chi appeared. Radiant Saint Sword. Jian Chen focused on 2 things at the same time. He pulled apart his 2 palms, and 4 dazzling radiant saint swords immediately condensed between his hands, before turning into silver streaks, as they shot towards the 4 Heaven Saint Master assassins. The 4 assassins all flew backwards as they spat out blood, and their complexions had become white as a sheet. They landed heavily on the ground. As for Hall Master Feng, the small blade had also pierced her chest. She immediately began to pale, while a trail of black blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. She was poisoned. Swish! The air-piercing sound appeared from behind. The small blade that had pierced through the girl's chest had turned around in the distance under Jian Chen's control and was flying back along its original path. With silvers of azulate sword chi, it passed through the girl's back, returning to Jian Chen's hand. The girl gave out a grunt and forcefully suppressed the poison that was quickly spreading throughout her body. She suddenly kicked off the ground with her feet, rising into the air and escaping into the distance. Jian Chen did not plan on letting the girl go. Although the girl only seemed to be about 12 or 13, Jian Chen knew that her true age was much more than that. Radiant Saint Sword. Jian Chen cried out deeply. A radiant saint sword quickly condensed, and with a swing of his hand, it turned into a long streak of light, pursuing the girl. The escaping girl suddenly turned around mid-air. A dagger similar to the ones used by the other assassins appeared in her hand, and she swung it at the radiant saint sword with all her strength. With a loud boom, the radiant saint sword was broken, but a mouthful of blood also sprayed from the girl's mouth. She began to fall out of the sky, while the poison in her body was also freed from the suppression of saint force. It immediately began to spread violently, quickly causing her complexion to darken. At this moment, the wind and clouds in the sky began to surge. A vast pressure permeated the surroundings. Yang Ling wielded the sword by pointing it towards the sky, while the sword itself radiated with a dazzling red light. The sword also gave off terrifying heat, causing the surrounding air to skyrocket in temperature. Taste my heaven-tier battle skill! Yang Ling yelled out. He suddenly swung the huge sword, swinging it towards the closest assassins. Although the assassins were Heaven Saint Masters, they still had not reached the peak, so they were far from Yang Ling, a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master, in terms of strength. They were directly immobilized by the pressure of the Heaven Tier battle skill. The dazzling red light from the huge sword slid past the throats of 4 assassins, beheading them all. Afterwards, it continued towards the 5th assassin without any decrease in might. It was already too late to dodge. The assassin cried out and used all his strength to strike the flaming red huge sword that had locked onto him. With a violent bang, the assassin's dagger was knocked away, while the huge sword stabbed into his chest like a lightning bolt. Most of the flames hidden within the huge sword surged into the assassin's body. Arg! The assassin cried out in pain. His entire body turned red at a visible rate, before a flame appeared on him. The flame quickly spread out, before turning into a sea of fire, enveloping the assassin, and quickly burning him into ashes. Yang Ling's Heaven Tier battler skill directly filled 5 experts of the same strength, which caused the original number of 6 to drop to 1. Yang Ling, go capture that girl. Let me handle the remainders. Jian Qin said loud and clear. With that, another 5 Radiant Saint Sword were condensed. Each sword was 4 meters in length and gave off a powerful rippling of energy. Its strength was clearly much more powerful than the ones before. The 5 Radiant Saint Sword were the most powerful ones Jian Qin could condense. The Radiant Saint Swords he had just cast were much more powerful, because they were cast from a method that he had comprehended in the dozen or so days after returning from the ferry. Yes, Master Yang Yutian. Yang Ling immediately replied and shot off in the direction of the girl. Looking at the Radiant Saint Swords that were clearly much more powerful floating beside Jian Chen, the expressions of the remaining assassins could not help but change. Retreat! One of the people bellowed. He no longer wanted to fight, dragging his heavily injured body towards the distance to flee. Afterwards, the 4 other people all began to flee in other directions. However, before they could all escape into the distance, the 5 swords floating beside Jian Chen immediately shot out, catching up to the people with a speed several times faster. They pierced deeply into the backs of the 5 assassins, before the sword exploded with a bang. The powerful energy blasted the bodies of the assassins apart, and caused it to rain blood. With the deaths of the 5 assassins, Yang Ling also returned from the distance. To no surprise, he carried the girl in his hand. The girl's face had already darkened, clearly deeply poisoned already. Yang Ling threw the girl onto the floor and said, Master Yang Yutian, I've caught the person. Are you fine? I'm fine. They don't possess the strength to harm me. Jian Chen tidied up his rather messy clothes. Before, although he was taken by surprise and hit by the woman's palm, the attack was unable to harm Jian Chen's chaotic body. Also, the cold qi that had been forced into Jian Chen's body had completely disappeared from a surge of chaotic force. Jian Chen arrived before the girl and stared coldly at her. He asked, Where did you obtain the material for making these small blades? The girl stared at Jian Chen in mockery and said with an old tone, Why does a person who is about to die ask so many questions? Even if you ask them, it's a waste, because you won't be able to live for much longer. No one can survive from the pursuit of the Yamahal. Not even saint rulers. The girl's voice was very husky, and it did not suit her age at all. Just from the voice, it was easier to believe that she was an old woman in her 70s or 80s. Jian Chen's complexion became overcast. If you know where the material for making this small blade is from, I might be able to let you go. Jian Chen cared very much towards the small blade, because it was made out of a material used to make the azulite swords. It was called Heaven's Soul Stone. The amount of Heaven's Soul Stone he currently had was far from enough, because there was a great demand for forging the azulite swords. It was basically a quarter of all the materials. Don't you think you can get any information from me? The girl said coldly, before closing her eyes. Jian Chen glared at the girl for a while, before saying with a deep voice, Yang Ling, restrict her movements and take her back to the headquarters. Tui. Suddenly, black blood sprayed from the girl's mouth. The girl collapsed powerlessly on the ground, becoming lifeless. Yang Ling quickly examined the girl's body and said, Master Yang Yutian, she's already committed suicide by stopping her heart. Jian Chen said nothing. He glanced at the poison-clad blade in his hand, before putting it away silently. He turned around and walked towards the carriage. Let's continue on our way back to the headquarters. The horse driver on the carriage hurriedly leapt down from the carriage, arriving in front of Jian Chen. He asked out of concern, Esteemed Radiant Saint Master, are you unharmed? It's no longer safe on the road. Quickly enter the carriage, I'll immediately drive the carriage back to the headquarters. Jian Chen said nothing and immediately entered the carriage. Currently, all his attention was on the matter about the small blade, while the assassination did not affect him at all. He had experienced countless slaughters in his life, so something so small had already become as common as a meal. However, just when Jian Chen had basically entered the carriage, the horse driver pulled out a dagger without any sounds. Like a lightning bolt, he stabbed at Jian Chen's back. If Jian Chen was hit by this attack, the dagger would pierce his heart from the back. A gleam of light flashed across Jian Chen's eyes and shortly afterwards, his lips curled into a sneer of disdain. The dagger was viciously stabbed at Jian Chen's back, but it only punctured the clothes that Jian Chen wore. Just when the sharp blade reached Jian Chen's body, it was as if it had hit a tough steel board instead, unable to advance any further. The complexion of the horse driver changed slightly, but he reacted very quickly. The saint force in his body flowed steadily into the dagger. He used all his strength to push with the dagger, but no matter how hard he tried, the dagger was unable to continue into Jian Chen even by a little. It was as if an extremely tough, metal wall was blocking the dagger's path. Bang! At this moment, Yang Ling had arrived. He directly threw a punch at the horse driver without a second thought, knocking the horse driver flying, around 10 meters away. He hit the ground and constantly vomited blood. Bastard, who would have thought that you, the driver, is also an assassin? Yang Ling roared at the horse driver. He was currently completely angered. As Jian Chen's bodyguard, he had already made 2 mistakes in such a short time. If it were another Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, perhaps they would have passed away long ago. Jian Chen stuck his head out of the carriage and gazed at the horse driver with a complicated expression. He sighed in wonder, what great concealing technique. Not only were you completely silent when you struck out, not even a sliver of killing intent leaked out. Even I did not feel it at all. You must be someone who's been trained before. I wonder which organization you belong to. The Underworld Sect. The horse driver stuttered each word, while he stared fixedly at Jian Chen. If it were not for the defensive treasure on you, you would have died under the hands of the Underworld Sect. Jian Chen revealed the sliver of a sneer and muttered, the Underworld Sect and the Yamahal. 2 of the 3 great assassination organizations have actually come. Looks like the person who wants to kill me really does think highly of me. I just wonder if the Bloodsword Sect is taking part or not. With that, a radiant saint sword condensed in Jian Chen's hand, which directly shot towards the horse driver. He was only an Earth Saint Master and was already heavily injured from Yang Ling's punch. He did not have any ability to dodge Jian Chen's sword, so he died on the spot. Yang Ling, you drive the carriage next. After I return to the headquarters, it won't be too peaceful for me in this upcoming time. Chapter 754, Saint Ruler Assassins. With the death of the horse driver, Yang Ling was naturally responsible next for driving the carriage. Yang Ling drove the carriage around the corpses of the dozen or so assassins, traveling quickly into the distance. All that was left behind was the splatters of blood everywhere and several corpses, a testimony for everything that had occurred before. In the distance, the people who had gathered to watch all gave way to the carriage, all staring at the person in the carriage with admiration. Clearly, they had witnessed the abilities displayed by Jian Chen to consecutively slaughter several powerful Heaven Saint Masters, and all admired the strength Jian Chen showed. At this moment, a ripple suddenly surged in the faraway space. An invisible arrow, completely formed from world force, shot with incomparable speed towards the carriage, as if it was fused with the surroundings. Jian Chen, who sat cross-legged in the carriage, snapped open his eyes and two gleams of light flashed in his eyes. He was a saint ruler himself, so he naturally could feel the invisible world force very clearly. There's a powerful saint ruler trying to assassinate me, Jian Chen thought to himself. He was not even perturbed when he faced against the dozen or so assassins before, but in this very moment, he finally became stern. What made him think was probably how to escape without exposing his identity. The world force arrow shot towards the carriage silently, while Jian Chen, who sat in the carriage, was pained. This was because he could not react in any shape or form currently, as he was a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master and should not have been able to sense world force that could only be controlled by saint rulers. In that crucial moment, the surrounding space quickly froze. It caused the invisible arrow that shot towards the carriage to slow down, as if it had entered mud. Its advancing speed was no longer as fast as before. Shortly afterwards, a gray-robed, middle-aged man shot over like a lightning bolt with unbelievable speed, as if he had fused with the surroundings. He stood before the invisible arrow, and blocked it with his body. As he clenched his hand, the invisible world force quickly gathered in the man's hand, and formed a huge invisible sword. He swung it to receive the incoming arrow. The huge sword collided with the arrow mid-air. It did not give off an expected boom, but instead the space there trembled violently. The invisible arrow was dispersed and the giant, invisible sword condensed by the man continued into the distance without any decrease in speed, just that its size had shrunk by a portion. Several kilometers away, a black-robed old man floated silently in the air. He stared sternly at the gray-clothed man, and a long bow appeared in his hand shortly afterwards. He quickly drew the bowstring and shot out an invisible arrow at the sword, before fusing with the surrounding space without even looking at the outcome. He turned around and fled into the distance, immediately disappearing. You offend my Radiant Saint Master Union and you think you can just leave like this? Stay behind. A powerful killing intent flashed across the man's eyes. He immediately began to chase the fleeing old man. Just as the man began his pursuit, another 3 invisible arrows formed from world force shot towards the carriage from the north, south and east. They were all extremely fast. The middle-aged man's expression changed greatly. He came to a screeching halt in his pursuit for the old man, and turned around and tried to return with all his might to stop the 3 arrows. As the man traveled through the air, he grabbed at the empty space and a huge, invisible sword immediately condensed from world force in his hand. It immediately shot towards the first arrow. At this moment, he had already arrived in the path of the second arrow and threw a fist dazzling with white light, dispersing the second arrow. However, the third arrow had already approached the carriage. The man no longer had any time to stop it and could only watch helplessly as it hit the carriage with lightning speed. In that very moment, a gleam of light flashed across Jian Chen, who sat in the carriage. Within his dantian, the chaotic Niden began to spew chaotic force madly, filling up every corner of his body. It completely activated the extremely powerful defense of the chaotic body. Bang! The third arrow, condensed from world force, shot into the carriage, landing on Jian Chen's chest with great accuracy. With a violent boom, the invisible energy completely destroyed the luxurious carriage, while the energy ripples knocked Yang Ling, who was driving the carriage, flying. He coughed up a lot of blood. As for Jian Chen, he shot off like a cannonball, passing through the sturdy walls of several stores and finally stopping several kilometers away. The expensive white robes he wore had already turned into smithereens, revealing a golden silk armor that glowed slightly. The armor was the defensive treasure that was made from primordial god silk. Jian Chen climbed up off the ground in a sorry appearance. He stared in curiosity at the golden mail made from primordial god silk, and the light in his eyes became brighter and brighter. This was because the power from the arrow before was completely blocked by the golden mail. His chaotic body did not play any purpose at all. He had made those preparations before for nothing. Are you okay? A heavy voice sounded from close by. A gray-clothed middle-aged man arrived near Jian Chen, floating 3 meters above the ground. He currently stared at the armor in curiosity. I'm fine. I thank Senior for helping out. Jian Chen clasped his hands at the middle-aged man. The man stared at the golden armor on Jian Chen with a flowing eyes for a while, before moving his gaze away to the distance. If you're fine, then that's good. But this assassin from the underworld sect can't be allowed to leave so easily. The man did not pay any more attention to Jian Chen, disappearing in a flash. He pursued the assassins in the distance with an extremely great speed. Not long later, powerful energy ripples exploded in the distance. The middle-aged man had already caught up with the assassins, and was currently embroiled in a great fight. At the same time, a large group of people flew over from the distance. Leading them were 2 old men on white clouds, both in white, long robes. They seemed like immortals, and behind them followed 3 middle-aged men in tight clothing. The 5 of them directly traveled towards Jian Chen, before finally descending beside Jian Chen. The 2 old men who lead them was, to no surprise, the President of the Union and the Grand Elder. Yang Yutian greets Master and the Grand Elder. Jian Chen immediately clasped his hands, before casually glancing over the 3 middle-aged men behind the President and the Grand Elder. He could clearly feel that all 3 of them were saint rulers. The President, Grand Elder and the 3 men all stared at Jian Chen's golden armor in wonder. However, they soon shifted their gazes from it, looking towards Jian Chen as per usual. Yang Yutian, are you fine? The President asked gently, filled with concern. I thank Master for showing concern. I am fine. Jian Chen replied. Afterwards, he quickly glanced over the golden armor he wore and could not help but worry in secret. He did not know whether the President was interested in his armor or not. What wondrous mail! It's actually able to block an attack from a saint ruler and have the owner come out unharmed. Looks like blocking the blow from before is not even this mail's limit. I just wonder how powerful its defensive power is. Yang Yutian, with this piece of armor, it seems that normal saint rulers would struggle to harm you. And I can also relax a little about your safety. The Grand Elder said in marvel. Soon, his gaze slowly became a glare and he said with a deep voice, but none of those assassins are allowed to leave. At this moment, the battle in the distance became more and more intense. From all 4 cardinal directions, the 4 saint ruler assassins were all intercepted by people. Another few figures appeared with a flash, approaching where Jian Chen was with great speed. They arrived at the street very soon. There were a total of 8 people who had come, all of different ages, some old and some young. As soon as the 8 people arrived, they all glanced at Jian Chen first, especially the golden armor Jian Chen wore, which made their eyes glow slightly. Afterwards, the 8 people all clasped their hands at the President, speaking rather politely, I greet the President. In the next moment, the 8 of them all saw the Grand Elder and they all became slightly stunned. One of them immediately said, so it's the Grand Elder. I heard several years ago, the Grand Elder was injured and has always spent the time in the headquarters in treatment, making us all worry. Looking at it now, the Grand Elder is in good health again. What a joyous occasion. The Grand Elder glanced past the 8 of them indifferently and did not go into the matter of him being injured. He said with a slight smile, who would have thought that the ancestors of the 8 clans have come. Grand Elder, the city of God is managed by our 8 clans. Now that something so big has happened, how can we not come? An old man chuckled, before glancing at Jian Chen. He said with a smile, I heard that a prodigy appeared in the Radiant Saint Master Union, reaching Class 6 despite being so young. I believe you must be that person. You really are extraordinary, to receive a blow from a Saint Ruler as a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master and come out unscathed. It's an eye-opener for me. As he spoke, the old man instead constantly stared at the golden armor on Jian Chen. A weird light flickered in his eyes, while an unconcealed silver of greed appeared in the depths. Before Jian Chen could reply, the Grand Elder said, "Since the peace of the City of God is maintained by you 8 clans, shouldn't you handle those 4 assassins?" The Grand Elder is right. It should be the people of the 8 clans handling it. The speaker was a middle-aged man. As soon as he finished, he flew into the distance. Shortly afterwards, the 7 other people all let to. They split into 4 groups of 2, pursuing the Saint Ruler assassins in 4 different directions. Not long later, the battle that had erupted in the distance became even more intense. Chapter 755, A Sly Senior Brother. 1. The President, Grand Elder and the 3 middle-aged men all looked away from Jian Chen and stared at the battle that had erupted in the distance. They're people from the Underworld sect and the Yamahal. Who would have thought that 2 of the 3 great assassination organizations who disappeared 1,000 years ago have come? The Grand Elder said with a deep voice. His complexion was rather overcast. The light in the president's eyes flicked. Looks like the people who invited them have paid quite a large price for the Underworld sect and the Yamahal to both send Saint Rulers. But both of them have suffered great losses from the Bloodsword sect 1,000 years ago, greatly weakened and almost wiped out. A short 1,000 years is not enough for them to recover much, so there's no need to fear. What really makes me worried is whether the Bloodsword sect is participating or not. If they also participate, the situation will be slightly more serious. As soon as he heard the Bloodsword sect, the Grand Elder's expression also became rather stern. Of the 3 great assassination organizations of the Tian Yuan continent, the Yamahal and the Underworld sect focus on hiding their presence, such that it becomes very difficult for people to realize their existence, before they kill their unsuspecting target in an instant. As for the Bloodsword sect, they use a special baleful force to fight their opponents. This baleful force is refined from killing and is extremely profound. It can fuse with the void and pass through countless things, able to affect the target's mind even when they're completely prepared, causing them to become disoriented. When it's bad, it can even cause the target to fall into an endless cycle of slaughter, allowing the people of the sect to easily take their lives. In a certain sense, the Bloodsword sect is much more terrifying than the Underworld sect and the Yamahal. The president nodded in agreement. You're right, but the only difference between the Blissword sect and the other 2 is that they are unable to hide themselves. The distinct features of the baleful force makes it easy to recognize them with a single glance no matter where they go, so when they take a mission, they choose to kill in the daylight, unlike how the other 2 organizations specialize in hiding their presences and killing from the dark, which is impossible to guard against. But the Bloodsword sects already disappeared from the continent for 1,000 years, so they should not appear. Listening to the conversation between the president and the Grand Elder, Jian Chen could not help but think of Uncle Xiao from Longevity Valley. This was because he knew that the Uncle Xiao living in seclusion in Longevity Valley was the sect master of the Blissword sect that had disappeared for 1,000 years. His strength was inestimable. At this moment, the battle far away gradually subsided. A dozen or so figures approached them from all directions, arriving at the street Jian Chen was standing very soon. The gray-clothed man who had come to help out Jian Chen before threw the corpse in his hand onto the floor and said expressionless, "I killed one." The man walked quietly towards the president and stood there. As for his eyes, they stared towards the golden mail on Jian Chen, revealing a strange expression in his eyes. This was the first time he had seen a defensive treasure that could block a blow from a Saint Ruler and come out unscathed. Afterwards, the remaining people all returned there. Of the 4 Saint Ruler assassins, only one of them was killed, while the rest all escaped. The 8 ancestors of the 8 clans all glanced at Jian Chen, while an indescribably light flickered in their eyes. Shortly afterwards, an old man in fiery red robes said to Jian Chen, "This must be Brother Yang Yutian. Brother Yang Yutian's received a blow from a saint ruler and has actually come out unharmed. This really has surprised us. Now that I look at it, everything seems to be due to this golden mail. I wonder what is this golden mail that Brother Yang Yutian is wearing, which actually possesses such powerful defensive ability. It's the first time I've seen something like this." This was something Junior had obtained through luck. As for the information regarding this golden mail, Junior knows nothing. Jian Chen said calmly and did not reveal too much information. Just as the people of the 8 clans wanted to continue their questions, the president's voice sounded, "Yang Yutian, for you to be able to obtain such a treasure is your luck. Fortunately, there was this treasure protecting you today, otherwise you would have been in danger. Although I've organized for a person to protect you in secret, I never thought that the 2 great assassination organizations would actually send for saint rulers to ambush you at the same time, which almost made you fall to their hands. Alright, now that this had all be resolved, come back to the headquarters with me." The president ignored the ancestors of the 8 clans, taking Jian Chen and the heavily injured Yang Ling back to the headquarters. After they left, the complexions of the 8 clan ancestors all became rather overcast. Who would have thought that Yang Yutian actually possesses a defensive treasure, allowing him to withstand a blow from a saint ruler without any injury? With such a treasure, it'll be quite difficult for the people of the underworld sect and the Yama Hall to kill him. A middle-aged man said with a deep voice. Of the 4 saint rulers sent by the 2 organizations, 1 is dead and the other 3 are injured. With the way they act, they will definitely just let this slide. We should just tell them about the news that Yang Yutian possesses a defensive treasure and get them to think of ideas. The red-robed old man said calmly, but in the very depths of his eyes hid a sliver of great freed. That golden mail on the Class 6 Radiant Saint Master can actually withstand an attack from a saint ruler and come out unharmed. If I obtain that treasure, wouldn't it just make me even greater? The red-robed old man thought, while the sliver of greed in the depths of his eyes grew stronger. The defense of the golden mail is just too powerful. I've never thought of a treasure that can block attacks from saint rulers. I must find a way to obtain it. At that moment, similar thoughts appeared in the minds of all 8 ancestors, and none of them revealed any indication of it on their faces. The defense of the golden mail was enough to tempt all of them. Under the president's lead, Jian Chen returned to the headquarters very soon, before directly flying to the highest floor. Yang Yutian, the assassins of the Yama Hall and the underworld sect are best at hiding themselves. Since they've got their eyes on you, they will definitely not let you go, according to the way and method they do things. As for the headquarters, it's a place similar to the public, without any great restrictions for people who enter. It's very easy for the assassins of the 2 organizations to infiltrate, and normal guards are of no use against them. As a result, the place you live right now is no longer safe. It's best if you move to the 5th floor, where the elders of the Radiant Saint Master Union rest and cultivate. Without the invitation from an elder, even core members aren't allowed up there. The Grand Elder said to Jian Chen, bearing some concern in his tone. Yes, Grand Elder. Jian Chen clasped his hands in response, displaying an expression of respect. He did not really care if he moved residency or not, as he believed that other than saint rulers, other assassins would not be able to pose a threat no matter what. This was because he possessed the chaotic body that even saint rulers struggled to injure, not to mention heaven's saint masters, as well as the 10,000 immunity, so neither poison nor assassination was effective against him. Yang Yutian, the room beside mine just happens to be empty. You should move in there. This way, if anything happens suddenly, I can make it there in time. Don't go out for this period of time. The underworld sect and the Yama Hall probably have planted plenty of people outside. The president said. Afterwards, Jian Chen moved from the 3rd floor of the castle to the 5th. As for the president and the grand elder, they did not even mention a word of the golden mail, which finally freed Jian Chen from his worry. In the blink of an eye, there was only 10 more days until the competition. For that time, Jian Chen stayed in his room without going out, passing them peacefully. As for the white tiger, it spent the time fast asleep without waking up. However, Jian Chen could clearly feel that the energy in the tiger's body was becoming more and more pure, bit by bit. Today, Jian Chen, who sat on the bed, comprehending the radiant arts, moved slightly. He slowly opened his eyes, and with the flip of his hand, an ancient jade pendant appeared. A weak thought immediately shot out from the pendant and entered the center of Jian Chen's eyebrows. Jian Chen remained silent for a while, before putting the piece of jade away and leaving the room. He walked a few meters, arriving in the room where the president rested. As soon as he went in, he discovered a middle-aged man who seemed to be in his 40s sitting on a chair courteously. To no surprise, the president of the union sat opposite of him. Yang Yutian greets master. Jian Chen bowed towards the president. The president gently placed down his cup of tea and looked at Jian Chen with a smile. Yang Yutian, this is your senior brother, Yun Tian. He's been in seclusion for over a decade and only came out yesterday. Why don't you quickly greet your senior? Jian Chen hurriedly glanced over Yun Tian and clasped his hands. Yang Yutian greets senior brother Yun Tian. Yun Tian raised his head to look at Jian Chen and a warm smile appeared on his face. So this is master's new disciple? Reaching class 6 despite being so young, not bad, much better than me. Oh right, junior brother Yang Yutian, I heard from master yesterday as soon as I came out of seclusion that you have a defensive treasure that can guard against attacks from saint rulers. I wonder if junior can show senior just what treasure it is. Senior Yun Tian, I must apologize. This golden mail never leaves me, and if I want to take it off, it's extremely difficult. I can only show senior Yun Tian some other time. Jian Chen said with a smile. Since it's inconvenient, another day. Yun Tian smiled without caring at all. He paused slightly before continuing. Junior Yang Yutian really is blessed to be able to obtain such a treasure. Though, if I had obtained it, I would definitely not wear it myself and instead offer it up to master, because such a treasure can only be used to a greater capacity by an expert like master. It'll make master stronger, as well as repay master for so many years of teaching. Junior Yang Yutian, don't you think so too? Yun Tian looked at Jian Chen with a smile. Hearing that, Jian Chen's complexion darkened slightly. A sliver of coldness flashed across his eyes. What Yun Tian meant was getting Jian Chen to give the golden mail on him to the president. Chapter 756, A Sly Senior Brother, 2, What a Crafty Senior. He actually wants me to offer up the armor. I just wonder whether it's Yun Tian's own intentions, or the president's intentions. Jian Chen thought quickly, but he did not hurry to speak. Jian Chen knew extremely well how valuable the golden mail was. It was created from the silk spat by the primordial god silkworm, which was born from the world. It was a unique treasure of the world, something that could not be obtained through luck and not from searching. He could give the piece of armor to his parents or his trusted friends without any hesitation, but he would not just offer it up like this to the president of the Radiant Saint Master Union. Jian Chen hesitated for a little while, hiding the anger in his heart. He said apologetically, Senior, this golden mail saved my life. If it were not for this piece of armor, perhaps Junior would have passed away in the hands of the assassins from the underworld sect and the Yama Hall. If I take off this armor, perhaps I would not take another step away from the headquarters. With Senior's knowledge and experience, Senior must know all about how great the assassins from the two organizations are at hiding their presence. It's impossible to guard against them. Yun Tian remained smiling and said neutrally, I've heard about Junior encountering assassins, but Junior does not need to worry. It was purely a coincidence. I believe Master did not anticipate that the two organizations would actually send several saint rulers to handle you, but something like that won't happen a second time. Saying all that, Yun Tian paused slightly before continuing. Also, many people should know about Junior possessing such a treasure now. There'll definitely be greedy people. If saint rulers move against Junior, how will Junior be able to protect the treasure? It'll end up in their hands in the end anyway, and instead bring even more trouble to Junior. Why don't you just give it to Master and have Master keep it for you temporarily? Once Junior becomes strong enough to keep the golden mail, Master can just return it. How does Junior feel about this? Yang Yutian, once you give the armor to Master, I'll borrow it from Master for myself. With this armor, I won't even fear saint rulers if I ever face them. I, Yun Tian, must obtain this golden mail that can even withstand saint ruler attacks. Yun Tian sneered inside and a powerful sliver of greed flashed past the depths of his eyes. Jian Chen looked towards the president and asked calmly, Master, is this what you would like? If Master wants it, I can have Master keep it for me temporarily. It's fine. With that, Jian Chen wanted to see whether it was Yun Tian's own idea, or that the president had instructed his senior to act like that. The president gently sipped at his tea and slowly placed down the cup. He looked at Jian Chen and said, Yang Yutian, I don't have much longer, at most 100 years. Or maybe in just a few more years, I'll turn into a pile of dust and disappear with the wind. Also, with my current strength, the amount of people that can harm me in the city of God can be counted on one hand. So, putting your treasured mail with me is just wasting away its capacity. Also, right now you face the combined assassination of the two organizations. If you wear the armor, it can save your life. You don't need to pay any attention to what your seniors said. Master, Yun Tian became impatient and wanted to persuade him, but he stopped when the president raised his hand. The president said, Yun Tian, you don't need to say any more. Your junior is an unprecedented prodigy and will definitely reach a level equal to me, or even break through and reach the legendary class 8. During this period of time, the safety of your junior is of utmost importance. It's most suitable for your junior to wear the armor. Jian Chen relaxed a little and glanced at Yun Tian. Looks like this is all Senior Yun Tian's intentions. He has already become greedy for the armor I possess. Jian Chen's mind was full of disdain. Unless it was a 6th heavenly layer saint ruler or above who personally moved out to take things from him, Jian Chen did not need to pay heed, let alone Yun Tian, a mere class 6 radiant saint master. In the city of God, no saint ruler would ever dare to infiltrate the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Master Union, unless the president himself had malicious intentions. Yun Tian's eyes flickered. With what the president had said, he already understood that his plan of using the president to obtain the treasured mail had already failed. Looks like Master views Yang Yutian with great importance. Otherwise, why would he give up on such a treasure? But I'll definitely obtain it. Yun Tian thought. At that moment, the president slowly became stern. Yang Yutian, Yun Tian, there's only a few more days until the competition. I called you two out today is mainly because I want to let you two understand the rules of the competition beforehand so you can make preparations. In a few days, the competition will be held in the Origin Saint artifact of our union. There is a world inside the artifact which hides a great space. All the competitors must live for half a month in it. In that half a month, your space rings will be sealed up by the artifact. You must find and obtain all the food and water you need in that period of time. The top 10 will be determined by how well you fight in the artifact. Inside, you must kill people with your own power. You will obtain all the points of the person you kill. In the end, the 10 people with the greatest number of points will obtain a chance at breaking through to Class 7. So, you are about to be embroiled in an intense battle within the artifact. You must remember to never become soft-hearted. Yun Tian's expression did not change at all. He had already participated many times, so he naturally knew the rules very well. However, Jian Chen was unable to stay as calm as Yun Tian. He asked, Master, wouldn't that mean that a lot of Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters die with each time it's held? The president laughed mysteriously, of course not. Although people enter the artifact with their own bodies, once they encounter any threats to their lives, they will be taken away by the power of the artifact, so there's no need to worry about your life. So no matter how intense the battles inside are for those who compete, it won't endanger your life. Is that so? Jian Chen came to an understanding and could not help but think of the competition back at Mercenary City. Compared to the gathering of mercenaries, the competition of the Union seemed much more humane and much safer. Alright, I've already said what I need to say. The two of you should leave and make final preparations for the competition in a few days. Yang Yutian, don't go outside during this time. The people of the other two great clans of the empire have all come, as well as they organized people to wait outside the headquarters, probably to look for you when you come out. Don't make contact with them, just in case they suck you into the struggle for power between the three clans. Yes, Master. After Yang Yutian and Yun Tian departed, the president's complexion became much more overcast and cold light flickered in his eyes. He said, the hidden battle between the three clans has already become white-hot. Once the matter of reaching Class 7 has ended, their battle will erupt properly. Tsar family, how can I, Adami, let you successfully unite the Holy Empire? Leaving from the president's place, Jian Chen directly returned to where he stayed. Just when Jian Chen entered the room, Yun Tian also followed behind. He looked at Jian Chen with a smile, Junior, Senior wants to discuss some things with you. With that, Yun Tian did not even wait for Jian Chen's approval, directly entering Jian Chen's room. Jian Chen remained calm and did not care about Yun Tian's impoliteness. He swung his hand and closed the door, walking over to his bed and sat down. He said indifferently, Senior Yun Tian, I wonder why you have come looking for me. Yun Tian sat down in a chair. Only after hesitating slightly did he begin speaking, Junior, Senior wants to borrow your treasured mail for a few days for the upcoming competition. After the competition is over, I'll definitely return it to you, because this time, I have an extremely strong feeling that if I get into the top 10, I'll definitely break through and reach Class 7. If I really do break through, I will definitely not forget about Junior's kindness for lending me the armor. Yun Tian stared fixedly at Jian Chen. A weird smile formed on Jian Chen's face as he stared deeply back at Yun Tian. Senior Yun Tian, I'll come clean. Junior also has an extremely strong feeling that if I get into the top 10, I'll definitely break through and reach Class 7. As a result, I must get into the top 10, while this mail on me is my greatest assurance. This is easy then. Once we enter the artifact, let's work together. With your senior's strength as the 8th on the 10 great Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, we'll both be able to get within the top 10. Yun Tian laughed. Perfect. In the artifact, we'll travel together. That way, there won't be any problems at all in reaching the top 10. Yun Tian began to laugh happily. Junior is right. It's already so close until the competition. Why don't you give the treasured armor to Senior, for Senior to get familiar with it beforehand? Jian Chen's smile became wider, while a sliver of mockery appeared vaguely in his eyes. He said, Senior, leaving the mail with Junior is enough. As long as we travel together, Junior can guarantee you that you will get into the top 10. It's not important whether you have the mail or not. Yun Tian's smile suddenly froze, while his complexion became rather awful. He said with a deep voice, Junior, are you really unwilling to lend this piece of armor to Senior? Only when it is worn by Senior can it have a greater effect. That way, our chance at getting into the top 10 will increase greatly. Senior, I don't know if what you want is the treasured mail, or a spot in the top 10. If it's the top 10, then I can guarantee Senior with my strength. If it's for the mail, Senior will definitely be disappointed. Jian Chen's eyes were filled with satire. What Jian Chen had said caused Yun Tian's complexion to become even darker. He knew that his chance at obtaining the mail this time had already hit zero, so he immediately sneered, before turning around and leaving the room. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.